Chapter 541, Up on the Tree, Down on the Ground. Deep Waters wondered if it was Goofy who had stepped on the trap, but he did not expect to hear a series of traps triggering consecutively. Deep Waters' line of sight was obstructed from seeing just what was going on, so he quickly adjusted his steps to increase his field of vision until, finally, the scene behind a large tree appeared before Deep Waters' eyes. His jaw instantly dropped at what he saw. Meanwhile, all around the jungle, more and more members from Deep Freeze poked their heads over and stood rooted to where they were as they shared the same expression with Deep Waters. Their eyes bulged in disbelief, and their mouths hung agape. Right before their eyes, Goofy was dancing crazily within the trap formation that Deep Freeze was practicing setting up in preparation for the upcoming city war, which they hoped to dominate and come out on top of. The series of snaps that came from the traps was actually all due to Goofy's feet. Every step he took, he would trigger the traps, yet even as each of them sprang forth at high speed, looking to ensnare the mage, they were no match for Goofy's lightning-fast reflexes with his sword tip held right below his waist. Every time a trap sprang out, his foot would promptly leap away, and before it could bite into his ankle, his sword tip would make contact with the trap's jaws. Instead, clank, clank. The first clink was the trap triggering, whereas the other clink was when Goofy struck it down. Deep Waters really had no words to describe what he was witnessing now, and this scene had dredged up a bad memory. The first time they had crossed paths with Goofy and heard the traps behind them triggering, he had hurried to look in his excitement, thinking that Goofy had been ensnared by the trap laid out. In the end, when he turned around, what he saw was Goofy swatting away a trap, which then flew right to his nose. Meanwhile, Goofy's performance right now was far more preposterous than what he had shown the last time, for the man was currently facing against Deep Freeze's trap formation. This was, after all, not the steps right outside Lori City's prison, where the traps were laid out bare. In the jungle, these traps here were all properly concealed beneath the detritus, so there was no way that Goofy would be able to detect the position of these traps prior to triggering them. From the moment he gingerly triggered that first trap, it was like a chain of traps had been set off at once. In order to avoid the first trap, he would then come into contact with the second, and evading the second meant that he would step on the third. Deep Waters and the others watched the scene with dumbfounded eyes, even as Goofy incessantly bemoaned his fate throughout this entire ordeal, where getting a foothold in all this became a luxury he could not afford. Goofy did not dare to slip up, his hands full just from dealing with these traps. He could barely take note of where Broken Water Arrow had escaped to, and after consecutively triggering all these traps like this, by the time he finally found his first opportunity to firmly plant a foot to the ground, the entire area was quiet, and not a single contraption broke through the ground snapping. Goofy heaved a long sigh of relief but did not drop his guard. Maintaining that stance with him standing on one foot, Goofy would first have to probe out another spot free of traps before he could dress the other leg down. The members from Deep Freeze that were crowding around, watching this display, all shared the same ashen expression. Seeing that Goofy was no longer triggering any trap on his end, everyone exchanged glances with one another. Say 17. 17 of them. Someone reported with a stutter. These men know what the number meant. Goofy had stepped on 17 traps but had come out of all that unscathed. 17 traps had all been struck down by that single sword of his. Recalling the entire sequence, watching Goofy step onto that first trap up to this point seemed like a dream. Everyone realized that they could not exactly recall how Goofy had achieved this, because everything had happened so fast that they were still able to hear the double clinks rattle in their heads even now. The first clink was the sound of the trap being sprung. The second clink was the trap being struck down. All of a sudden, everyone in this crowd of hunters felt that the future for their job class was impossibly bleak. In such a situation, where 17 consecutive traps failed to even snare a single target, what sort of future could they speak of about their job class? Everyone was rooted to the spot, looking dazed. Even the trees around them were more emotive than they were. Rustling leaves could be heard as a breeze swept by. Goofy did not seem to realize the devastating psychological shadow he had created in these onlookers' hearts after that ludicrous feat, and just maintained that flamingo posture of his as he used his sword to poke at the ground below, searching for a safe bit of land to put his other foot down. The rustling of the leaves suddenly became louder, Yet the breeze did not suddenly become stronger. Everyone quickly connected the dots in their minds as they turned to face the direction of the sound. Broken water arrow. The man dashed out from the jungle in a hurry and came hurtling toward Gufei, who was currently caught within the trap formation. Old Broken. A cry came from within the crowd, as if these men viewed Broken Water Arrow as their final life-saving miracle grass. They hoped that someone could prove to them that there was a future in the art of trapping, and that it was capable of defeating any manner of indomitability. Everyone seemed to have collectively forgotten that Broken Water Arrow was not a hunter that only played with traps. "You're still here." Gufei was moved. He initially thought that the reason Broken Water Arrow had lured him to this place full of traps was to use the formation to aid his escape. He had not expected the man to be secretly watching him from the sidelines as he searched for an opportunity to strike. Broken Water Arrow turned out to be someone who had far more backbone than what Gufei had given him credit for. Broken Water Arrow did not reply to him. Quietly dashing toward Gufei with murderous intent, he, too, stepped foot into the trap formation that Gufei was currently stuck in, but the difference was on how the man remained safe and unhindered with every step he took. "Old Broken is too cool." Everyone yelled. They might be obeying their guild leader's instruction not to interfere with the duel, but it was fine to show favoritism for one of the parties involved, right? In this fight unfolding before their eyes, these players from Deep Freeze all stood on the side of Broken Water Arrow no matter what sort of perspective they adopted. Actually, if it were not for the fact that their guild leader, Deep Waters, was watching this fight from the sidelines as well, some of these players would probably have difficulties holding themselves back any longer. Would it not be fine for them to secretly shoot off a shot or two since they were not allowed to aid Broken Water Arrow openly? After all, this was the strong suit of a hunter. Broken Water Arrow came hurtling over aggressively, yet Gufei remained in that same posture with a single foot on the ground, unable to prod out a spot for him to put his other foot down, which was precisely the opportunity that Broken Water Arrow had been hoping to seize. Twin Incineration. Incinerate. Gufei did not dare to wildly move his lower body, so he had no choice but to defend himself with aggression, his sword brandished against the incoming hunter as he stabbed his Twin Incineration right at Broken Water Arrow. Not in the least bit flustered, Broken Water Arrow saw the attacking coming right at him and turned his body did a side hop. Gufei would usually never end his attack with a single move, but all he could do was curse motherfucker when he saw Broken Water Arrow dodge his attack. The position he had hopped to made it so that it would be impossible for Gufei to follow up his attack at the man as there was no space for him to shift his position properly. The man had made the right conjecture that Gufei did not dare to move too much in his current state. Having evaded that attack, Broken Water Arrow saw no reason to leave things as it was and continued his advance toward his target. When Gufei saw the man going straight at him, he reckoned that since Broken Water Arrow had given up on using the beloved crossbow of his as a pistol, the sharpshooter must have decided to close in and engage him in close combat instead. Gufei would normally welcome such an attempt with open arms, but this was a seriously difficult challenge for him right now. Even though some movies out there often depicted experts capable of fighting off others without having to move, it would often be a situation where an expert martial artist would be toying with noobs. Gufei would naturally be able to do the same with any random player, but the opponent he was now facing was not just a random player. Broken Water Arrow lifted his hand up to Gufei, going straight for his throat in that one charge. It was a particularly vicious move, for if this were a proper fight in real life, it would entirely be possible for Broken Water Arrow to snap his neck with this one move. Gufei did not dare to be careless. He tilted to the side and avoided that move, while he used the suspended leg, which had yet to touch the ground, to send a kick right at Broken Water Arrow's head. Broken Water Arrow hunched his back to avoid it, even as he swept his leg down to Gufei's lone leg, which was supporting the full weight of the latter's body. Ultimately, Gufei's kick was faster. Suddenly changing the direction of the kick, it brushed past his opponent's head as his leg moved to stomp down on it the moment Broken Water Arrow hunched over. Putting strength into that blow, Broken Water Arrow nearly ended up sprawled on the ground in that stomp, allowing Gufei to use his head as a foothold to get his other leg lifted off the ground and avoid that sweeping leg from Broken Water Arrow. Gufei was now in the air. Translocation, blank. Gufei pointed to the sky and chanted while in the air, materializing high above the ground in the next moment. Gufei used both his hands to grab a hold of the tree branch hanging just above, swinging his entire body and flipped himself upright on it. "Sorry about that, I had no choice." Gufei gestured toward Broken Water Arrow, expressing his helplessness in his disrespectful action of using the man's head as a foothold. Broken Water Arrow was even more depressed when he heard this. It felt as if the exchange of moves from before had all been a trap. It was apparent that, in Gufei's situation moments ago, the biggest weakness he held was that flamingo stance of his, but having already deduced that Broken Water Arrow would strive to sweep that leg holding him up, Gufei took advantage of that to casually use Broken Water Arrow's head as a support. With that one step he took, adding the distance his single blink could cover, Gufei successfully escaped the trap formation in an instant. No matter how indomitable Broken Water Arrow was, there was no way he could fly up the tree, so he quickly pulled out his crossbow and fired a shot at the mage, thinking that Gufei might not be as nimble as he was on the ground up there. In the end, Gufei demonstrated his firm foundation in his lower body kung fu by maintaining his balance even while he hopped on the tree branch. A left spin, a right whirl, but Broken Water Arrow had yet to land a single shot on Gufei even after emptying out all 6 bolts in his crossbow. He quickly pulled out the cartridge and attempted to reload the crossbow bolts into it again, time and again looking up at Gufei who was still on that tree. He watched Gufei pull out an apple and crunch into it, which was the latter's way of replenishing his ammunition. Mana replenishment was ultimately still slower, and Gufei did not even have the time to wait until his mana was filled up. In the time it took for him to take 2 bites out of that fruit, Broken Water Arrow had fitted the 6 bolts into the magazine cartridge and had it aimed at Gufei once more. Gufei helplessly shrugged toward the man. "What's the point? You can't hit me, anyway. Do we really have to keep doing this till you run out of bolts?" Broken Water Arrow gritted his teeth and had to admit to the truth in that statement, but what else could he do aside from shooting him? "If you wanna play with your crossbow at the end of the day, what's the point of rushing at me in the first place?" Gufei asked. Broken Water Arrow did not answer him. Honestly, he obviously did not intend to charge over in that fashion, either. Still, how was he to know that Gufei would be so preposterous to the point where he would not be ensnared even after triggering 17 traps consecutively? Gufei was previously maintaining his posture, not daring to make any sudden movement, which was no different from getting himself ensnared, but that would only be what appeared to be case to people who knew nothing about the formation, like Gufei. Broken Water Arrow, who was completely familiar with the trap formation, knew very well that after Gufei managed to consecutively trigger the 17 traps, he was actually out of the formation already, and all it would take was 2 random but bold steps from Gufei to realize this. Broken Water Arrow sprinted over precisely in hopes of forcing Gufei to retreat before the latter came to realize that fact. After all, engaging in close combat would make it much easier for Broken Water Arrow to control the movement his opponent would make, but who would have guessed that Gufei would use his head to get himself up the tree safely? Life was truly unbearable. Chapter 542, Old Broken, "You are mistaken again." The hearty cheers from all the members of Deep Freeze came to an abrupt end when they saw Gufei come to a rest after leaping up on the tree. The crowd was now back to their state of being dumbfounded. And just like a few seconds ago when they saw Gufei take on their trap formation, their mouths hung agape once more. There was nothing strange about climbing up a tree in a game, but suddenly getting up on a tree in a close PvP duel like this was a park technique that nobody currently residing in Lenian City had developed yet. How did he do it? The people asked in hushed voices. There were even some who had tried replicating it physically, hunching their bodies to let another player step on their heads and see if that was a method to get up on the tree quickly. However, reality proved that, besides Gufei having his blink to achieve this, finding purchase around a round head and swiftly using it to propel oneself up just like how Gufei had done it was a technique in itself. That was because this one step had to be rapidly executed. Both parties were exchanging blows, so this was not the other player stiffening their neck to provide the necessary support for the other. If the player attempting this was not quick enough, all the opponent had to do was turn his head away and they would avoid being stepped on. The person executing it could accidentally use too much strength in his step, too, which would cause the other player to be sent sprawling on the floor, eating dirt. Instead, there was no way someone could get the push needed to complete this leap consensually. Following this, they saw Gufei turn and twirl his body up on the tree to avoid the 6 shots from Broken Water Arrow, which only caused the crowd to become even quieter. They all thought that it might be unfair for them to continue cheering for Broken Water Arrow at this rate. Given how he was facing against such a fearsome opponent, asking Old Broken to achieve victory might simply be too tall a request, and they should not make things difficult for him. Even though Broken Water Arrow knew that continuously shooting at Gufei would be tough, he nevertheless felt he still possessed the initiative in this exchange. At the end of the day, all Gufei could do up on the tree was either lose his footing and fall off, or take a direct shot from his crossbow bolts. While it seemed as if Gufei was unable to threaten any sort of retaliation from up there. Crash! A sudden flash appeared from up above. Broken Water Arrow paused ever so slightly as he hurried to take a step and dodge. Another streak of lightning scorched the ground right next to where he had sidestepped. He paled again. It's only been a few minutes. How have I forgotten that he's a mage again? Broken Water Arrow really wished he could slap himself across the cheeks right now. Nevertheless, I am still the one holding the advantage here. The speed at which the spells were unleashed from a mage was no match to the speed of projectiles an archer could release, especially since most of them required the luxury of precluding the casting time needed. No matter how powerful Gufei was, this was not something he had the capability of changing. Now that Broken Water Arrow had determined the situation that they were in, he did not hesitate to lift his head and begin firing. The repeated firing from his crossbow sounded. The crossbow bolts whistled through the air, and Gufei continued to dodge these shots like before. Turning to his left, twirling to the right, turning his body to its side, bending over by his waist. The man looked as if he were about to fall off the tree branch at any time, but that never happened, even as none of the shots fired off found their mark. Broken Water Arrow was very patient. He withheld his snipe this entire time, unwilling to use it as he did not want Gufei to get used to the speed of the projectile when it would be unleashed. He was hoping to wait until Gufei made a mistake in the process of dodging before capitalizing on it. Besides, not using snipe the entire time would work as a sort of pressure on Gufei. Casually using it would just let him feel more relaxed when he knew that the skill was on cooldown. Snipe was not a high-level skill that had not been announced. The officials had public released the complete data of this skill by this time, so everyone knew about the 45-second cooldown it would normally have. Broken Water Arrow hoped to put Gufei in a constant state of stress by holding it back, not even allowing him to have that 45-second breathing room. It was difficult for physical fatigue to be set in parallel world, but mental fatigue and strain worked in the same way as in the real world here. Right now, Broken Water Arrow was looking to forcefully tire out Gufei's mental state first. Pulling out the cartridge, fitting in the arrows, and continuing the stream of arrows. Broken Water Arrow mechanically completed this sequence of action with deft ease. He raised his crossbow to fire immediately after he fitted in the bolts, thus continuing Gufei's performance up on the tree. While he attacked, Broken Water Arrow tried to think up of other methods based off Gufei's previous attacks and discovered that the way the latter dodged and evaded his bolts were unlike how players would recklessly run in a serpentine motion in an effort to make it difficult for the attacker to get a bead on him. Instead, his way of evasion by calmly identifying the direction of Broken Water Arrow's attack. Without a doubt, this was a method only someone who possessed outstanding reflexes and judgment could do. Broken Water Arrow tried using some tricks he had to make Gufei lose focus, but none of them worked. He realized that Gufei no longer had his eyes on him but on the crossbow in his hands. Instead, Gufei's concentration was devoted toward where the crossbow was pointed and did not seem to care if Broken Water Arrow was alive or dead, sprawled on the ground or standing. I refuse to believe that you can keep dodging like this. Broken Water Arrow began putting tremendous effort into this, not giving up despite each bolt he fired off missing its target. Reloading the bolts and carrying on, Gufei still managed to return fire with a spell or two from time to time, sometimes a thunderbolt, at other times an AO spell, or a few times even a measly fireball. Broken Water Arrow dutifully dodged these attacks and fired his own attacks in return. The two men continued in such a fashion, maintaining the distance between them as they exchanged fire. Yawn. The onlookers had no idea who was the first to yawn, but it began to spread like H1N1, And soon, yawns could be heard all over. After the initial surge of excitement everyone was feeling watching the two fight, it had since petered out into a lull of drowsiness. Things were no longer as climatic like before and they were all prepared to abandon this show. "Hasn't it been half an hour already?" someone asked a friend beside him. 24 minutes and 34 seconds to be exact. The friend beside him had already been bored to death and was no longer watching the battle but the time, instead. "Will anyone emerge victorious if they carry on like this?" The crowd began to share the same sentiment that Broken Water Arrow had. Everyone believed that Broken Water Arrow was holding the advantage in this situation, and all it took was a mistake from Goofy's part to end the fight. But the fact of the matter was, there was still no clear victor between the two even after such a long time. Someone will. To think someone actually still held such an optimistic outlook. Old Broken will sooner or later run out of bolts to shoot, right? Hey, don't lend Old Broken any bolts. If he comes asking for them. This voice was quickly disseminated among the crowd as they each clutched their quivers tightly. Can't they change things up a little? There were some who still held hope for this fight, wishing that there would be another climax. Ugh! Most of them began to show a more pessimistic view to the fight. "How long is that guy gonna keep evading? Why isn't he coming down? Probably afraid of the trap formation set up on the ground. But there's nothing set up there, shh. Someone hurriedly muffled the man's mouth. Even though they all hoped that this match it would quickly end, they were all holding on to the hope that Broken Water Arrow would be the victor, so none of them wanted to let Goofy know of this important information. Old Broken should just chase after the man up the tree, another supposed. How will he escape if an AO spell comes crashing his way while he's halfway climbing up the tree? Velp. It looks like we can only wait till Old Broken uses up all the bolts he's got on him. Everyone sighed deeply. The man himself, Broken Water Arrow, did not seem to show any of the anxiety these onlookers had, which obviously showed how resilient his state of mind was. More importantly, he had never once considered Goofy to be a normal player, nor was he holding on to any hope that he would be able to finish him off in the short time he had. This PvP isn't simply just a match of skill. It's a contest of spirit, and it will all depend on who can maintain this heightened level of concentration till the end. I have a great advantage since I hold the initiative, and he's surely expending far more energy than me here, so I can't lose. Broken Water Arrow encouraged himself. Another 10 minutes passed in this manner. Broken Water Arrow continued to focus his mind on this battle of concentration when he suddenly heard Goofy spoke, breaking the stalemate. "What took you so long?" he heard him ask. "There are plenty of traps here in the forest, gotta be careful." A voice from behind him answered. Broken Water Arrow turned to look backward in a hurry and saw Sword Demon. He had no idea when the man crept up on him, but they were no more than 3 meters apart right now. Broken Water Arrow was too focused on this fight he did not even notice it when someone else sneaked up behind him. "Your mission." With this said, Goofy leapt off the tree coolly and landed safely on the ground. The man then took several steps forward, seemingly unafraid of the possible traps lying around. Even though there was not any in actuality, there was no reason for Goofy to act in such a nonchalant manner. Broken Water Arrow watched Goofy pace off and had a feeling that, while he vaguely believed he held the initiative, when in fact, this mage had actually been leading him by the nose this whole time. He thought this was a contest of spirit when it was actually just a game for the man to bite time. Was the whole thing orchestrated just for Sword Demon to make his way over so that he could complete his daily mission? This incident had come a full circle and made its way back to where it started. This was ultimately a game. Broken Water Arrow watched as Goofy walk away and suddenly realized that the space where the man had stepped onto was the very same spot he had taken when he ran in. This person had been using his spells to attack up from the tree, forcing Broken Water Arrow to dodge time and again. This was especially the case for those AO spells of his, and each of them forced Broken Water Arrow needing to run for quite a distance in order to avoid them. In the process, Goofy was actually memorizing all the different routes Broken Water Arrow had ended up using and then plotted his own path from these routes. It no longer mattered if there were traps on the ground or not. Blinking his eyes as he looked at this a few more times, Broken Water Arrow experienced a mental breakdown once more. Gufei was not leisurely walking away right now either, but was instead revising the few routes Broken Water Arrow had taken previously as he thought of finding the best route to attack Broken Water Arrow from these. To actually make such preparation for an attack so self-assuredly, had Gufei considered him as meat on the chopping block already? Gufei was a professional combatant, so he was of course very efficient. Quickly charting out a way in to engage in the fight, he lifted his head and saw that Broken Water Arrow was staring right at him. Cocking his head to the side, he gazed over to Sword Demon, who was standing behind Broken Water Arrow. "Do you need my help?" Before he could even answer, the crowd watching this fight was the first to clamor. 2 versus 1. Shameless. These men all threw curses from every angle, but the parties involved in the fight ignored them all. Sword Demon calmly replied with a no need, which Gufei answered with an okay before he remained where he was. Broken Water Arrow looked at one man and then the other. Since they were both enemies, and one was even what Yixiao called a game-breaking existence, Broken Water Arrow had a good grasp of their characters. He believed that even if the two decided to gang up and engage him in a 2 versus 1 duel, they would not attempt to hoodwink the enemy by claiming otherwise. With Sword Demon already rejecting the offer, then Gufei would surely not meddle in the ensuing fight unnecessarily. Thus, Broken Water Arrow was certain that the duel would remain as 1 versus 1, but his opponent would be Sword Demon. Instead, Broken Water Arrow turned around and stared at Sword Demon. The thief was far from being as fearsome as Miles, but he nevertheless managed to defeat Cool Apple, and there was barely a distance of 3 meters between them currently. At such a range, with the speed of Shadow Mist Assault, he was still very apprehensive about the skill despite knowing how to dodge it. But with the ground littered in traps, Sword Demon will have his misgivings as well. He'll surely not attempt such a direct approach when making his attack, Broken Water Arrow thought to himself as he raised his crossbow, his arm steady as ever. Sword Demon's figure suddenly disappeared. Broken Water Arrow cried out in dismay to himself even as the thief reappeared, standing right before the sharpshooter. The 2 daggers in the former's hands plunged right toward the latter. Broken Water Arrow dodged part of the attack on reflex, but tragedy filled his heart. It seemed that he had made a miscalculation again. He did not expect for the solid old school gamer, Sword Demon, to take the risk and completely ignore the existence of the traps set. Chapter 543, Returning the Favor to You. Sword Demon was feeling rather despondent as well. He did not expect for Broken Water Arrow to still be able to react despite him activating his Shadow Mist Assault at such proximity. Sword Demon felt that the 2 stabs he had just done could not be any more reliable, but when used against someone who had professional training, he was still unable to make up for the differences in their reflexes. While he was incapable of dealing enough damage to insta-kill his target, the impact from Shadow Mist Assault was still applied, and Broken Water Arrow was sent flying a good distance from that attack, sending the latter hurtling toward the jungle foliage. Last time, Broken Water Arrow had been given a stab by Gufei with his sword when he had landed in his panic. Just when it seemed like this tragedy was about to repeat itself, Broken Water Arrow glanced over at Gufei. At this moment, Gufei's sword was already stowed away. He apparently only intended to watch the duel between the 2. Broken Water Arrow heaved a sigh of relief. As long as he could survive the attack, there would still be a chance for him to turn the tide of this battle. Broken Water Arrow thought of this even as he began to take note of his surroundings for any place he could take cover in while he hurtled through the air. In the end, he cried to himself in dismay when he saw where he would land. This was a location where he would be stuck right in a large swath of traps. Having already lost his balance as he sailed through the air, he was unable to adjust himself. Continuing along the trajectory he was flying, there was no doubt that he would end up triggering a trap and ensnaring himself. Everything happened so fast. In the moment Broken Water Arrow cried to himself in dismay, he had already found himself sprawled on the ground. Broken twigs and fallen leaves flew all over, followed by a series of clanking and snapping sounds, as he ate dirt. The experienced Deep Waters and the others could immediately tell that Broken Water Arrow had probably triggered at least 6 traps as he slid upon the jungle ground. Broken Water Arrow was now immobile from the waist down after crashing into the ground in such a fashion, but he was able to use his hands to pull himself up at the very least. Lifting his head up to look, Sword Demon was already clutching his daggers and was stalking over to him. His figure slowly disappeared from view as he got closer. Stealth. Broken Water Arrow was well within the trap formation, and the traps would trigger even while a player was stealthed. Sword Demon disappeared while he advanced toward his target, yet he never once appeared. There was only one explanation for this, and that was that Sword Demon had not triggered any of the traps. He was navigating through the traps in this trap formation perfectly with every step he took. This guy. Broken Water Arrow realized that Sword Demon was far more terrifying than he had imagined. Before, Sword Demon had recklessly sprinted toward Broken Water Arrow with his Shadow Mist Assault because he was certain that the area was devoid of traps there. When Sword Demon activated his Shadow Mist Assault, he had already expected that he would not be able to directly insta-kill the sharpshooter, but he had also presumed the man would not be able to cleanly dodge the attack at the distance they had between them then. As a result, Sword Demon had envisioned for his attack to send Broken Water Arrow right into the trap formation when he struck before. Sword Demon had managed to avoid the traps with every step he took now because he, too, had an understanding of this formation. Back when he was in disguise as a member of Deep Freeze to blend into the guild, Sword Demon had earnestly spent his time understanding how the trap formation worked, unlike Gufei, who had been casual about it. Sure enough, I can't underestimate this man. An expert gamer was still an expert, and every expert shared something in common. They would all use their brains. People who relied purely on brute strength or deck out and top grade equipment could never be a true expert. It was a little late for Broken Water Arrow to come to such a realization, however. Sword Demon had already disappeared right before his eyes, and he no longer had no idea where the man was. An internally and externally refined expert would be capable of locating people just through their senses alone. Broken Water Arrow had a comprehensive understanding of this theory, but unfortunately, he could not be considered to be such an expert himself. The level of refinement varied, and he could only muster this instinct intermittently. He might be able to use it in times of urgency or close calls, but with how the situation unfolded in such a slow pace, his attempts at intuiting Sword Demon's position would be in vain, unless he had the confidence to have the accuracy that Gufei possessed. Broken Water Arrow knew that the members from Deep Freeze would deck themselves out in equipment that served to improve upon the effect of their traps, so he knew he still had somewhere over 10 seconds before his movement speed would return to normal. By then, Sword Demon might have already made it right beside him. Broken Water Arrow had no way of resisting concealed attacks like that, and he finally decided to give up on this final struggle. There were enough tragedies created today, and Broken Water Arrow had no wish to continue being a laughingstock any longer. Everything was quiet. The silence was deafening. What was originally a very lively jungle this night had experienced plenty of such silence, but this, right now, was no doubt the quietest moment of all. Compared to the dumbfounded shock that came from the other occasions earlier, there was a sense of severity and dreariness this time. It was as if everyone were holding their breath as they waited for the conclusion to this battle. The pressure of the scene concentrated wholly onto the two men. Broken Water Arrow's mental state was as unyielding as ever, not once revealing any semblance of fear despite the pressure exerted on him. They were all waiting for Sword Demon to reveal himself and for Broken Water Arrow to disappear. When Sword Demon finally appeared, Broken Water Arrow did not immediately disappear. The thief only appeared right beside the snared sharpshooter, his dagger pointing at the other man's waist. "It's your loss," Sword Demon said. Broken Water Arrow abruptly looked over his shoulder when he heard this voice. The one who had spoken was Sword Demon, but curiously he had yet to die. Broken Water Arrow originally thought that he had the slimmest of chance left to flip the script, but as it turned out, Sword Demon's dagger was already placed by his waist the moment he turned around. It was not that Broken Water Arrow still had a chance to turn things around. Rather, Sword Demon did not actually deal the killing stab. Broken Water Arrow was nonplussed as he stared at Sword Demon. "What I owe you before?" Sword Demon sheathed his dagger. "We're even now." Broken Water Arrow was stunned. He knew what Sword Demon meant. They had previously suspected Broken Water Arrow's intentions for joining Deep Freeze and caused quite a lot of trouble in the process. Thereafter, they expressed their apologies toward the matter, and it was Deep Waters who had delivered their words of remorse. However, with the cat out of the bag, while Broken Water Arrow did not have the ill will they had first presumed for coming into contact with Deep Freeze, he did form a relationship with them with an ulterior motive in mind. From the way Broken Water Arrow saw things, saying that they owed him any sort of favors was hard to justify. "You don't really owe me any sort of favor." He looked Sword Demon straight in the eye. "Whether I owe you anything or not is up for me to decide and not you," Sword Demon said as he departed. "The point is, I don't think I owe you anything any longer, so I won't be showing you any mercy the next time we meet." Everyone stared. These people originally viewed Broken Water Arrow as a godlike figure, but now that he was defeated and was even been spared out to return the favor, anyone with a shred of self-respect would find this fate harder to swallow than simply dying outright. Leaving under the watchful gazes of such a crowd was by no means an easy affair. However, Broken Water Arrow did not seem to be bothered by all that, as he looked at the shrinking back of Sword Demon in the distance. "At this rate, I'm the one who feels I owe you something. Still, I'm someone who can separate my private and professional matter. When the time comes and I must kill you, I won't return you the kindness in such a fashion." "That's your business, do what you like," Sword Demon replied without even turning back. Broken Water Arrow stared at the man before glancing over at Goofy, who gave Sword Demon a polite nod, before he turned around and walked out of the trap formation. "Sorry about that." Sword Demon walked right up next to Goofy. "You expended so much effort, yet I ended up letting him off like this. What are you saying?" Goofy was piqued. "What do you mean so much effort?" "It was a piece of cake." The one happiest with this outcome was actually Deep Waters. Laughing the matter off, he already jumped right in front of the two and playfully slapped Sword Demon. "Ha ha ha! You're truly a man who can distinguish right from wrong. I'm admiring you more and more." Goofy gave him a side eye. "You're just thinking how difficult of a spot you'll be in if these two men, both of whom you're acquainted fought with, ended up fighting to the death right under your nose in your territory. Isn't that why this is the best resolution for you, right? Wow! To think you've actually seen through me so thoroughly. I'm impressed." Deep Waters began to clap Goofy across his back repeatedly with force as well. Goofy helplessly eyed him with disdain before looking back at Sword Demon. "When are you gonna do your mission?" "There's no rush. Now that we're all in this mess, I'm sure we'll have plenty of opportunity to meet that man again, yeah?" Sword Demon replied. "Be careful. That guy's still really difficult to deal with," Goofy cautioned. "Yeah." Sword Demon completely agreed with his assessment. Just from the fact that Broken Water Arrow survived his Shadow Mist assault meant that he was far beyond that of the average player. The members of Deep Freeze were still a little confused by what they had witnessed. However, they were already finding it strange that their guild leader refused to let them join in the fight, and after the battle was over, Deep Waters left Hold Broken to himself. Now, seeing how he was acting chummy with the two opponents, this only made them all the more confused. Just as they moved to demand an explanation for the many queries they had, everyone in the guild received a system prompt: "The player Broken Water Arrow has left Deep Freeze Guild." The entire guild was in an uproar. Even though the time Broken Water Arrow had been part of their guild was rather short, he had still been the focal point of everyone these few days. He was more than just a player whom everyone got along with, and with regard to his departure, it was only natural that they would all consider it to be a huge issue. Some gossiped with one another as others bombarded Deep Waters with private messages. Those that had just witnessed the PvP were all the more boisterous as they crowded around, believing that it must have something to do with a match that had ended moments ago. Deep Waters had no choice but to leave his two friends and let himself be subjected to the incessant questioning of this whole host of players around him. "It sure isn't easy being a guild leader," Sword Demon remarked emotionally. Back in the days, he too had his fair share of being inundated by the crowd like this over the channel or through voice chat, and he truly found that to be an annoying experience. Looking at how Deep Waters was now being pelted with questions from every angle in person by the crowd like this, Sword Demon could not help but shudder. The size of the guilds in Parallel World was larger than those in the other MMOs, and players interacting with one another face to face like this was required. Perhaps, he should be glad that he had failed to establish a guild here, given how he could hardly bear to watch the situation Deep Waters was currently in. Hee hee. Look at this crowd, Not using a brush of twin incineration will be too much of a waste. Gufei said in his corner. Sword Demon began sweating profusely when he heard him. If Gufei were in Deepwater's shoes, given his execution of twin incineration, a single swing from him would likely take down 20 players. Broken Water Arrow, who was leaving the jungle at this time, immediately contacted Yizia. I just met 1,000 Miles Drunk and Sword Demon. I lost to them. How coincidental for you guys to meet like this. Yizia commented. That guy ran to the jungle specifically to look for me, Broken Water Arrow explained. That guy. Yizia muttered. Gufei should have felt awkward to approach Deepwater's territory to look for Broken Water Arrow right away. This was his and Broken Water Arrow's analysis. Who would have guessed that this man would completely go against the grain? How are things on your end? Yizia asked. I did not die. Broken Water Arrow said it this way, not wishing to elaborate about the situation on his end. He made an effort to change the topic by asking, what about you? I'm on the road to Beishi City, Yixiao replied. Chapter 544, Silver Moon's History of Struggle. Two cities separated Linian City from Beishi City. It was not an easy trip to make. This was mainly because the territory of Linian City, which was inside a huge swathe of densely packed woodland, teemed with hunters. And since more and more players were crossing the level 40 threshold, the number of hunters in the jungle increased by the day, too. Given that it was the peak hours for gamers to be online in the server right now, encircle emits and traps abounded in every few steps. Yizia, who had more knowledge of this VR world than anyone out there, was able to tap into this in such a time like this. He might not know how the Linian City's players divided the entire jungle among themselves, but he at least knew the monster distribution in every area in this region. No matter how messy these players set their traps, there was no way that they would set them in places without monsters, right? Thus, by circling around and taking detours, a lone level 36 priest managed to traverse through the jungle without bumping into any sort of trouble. This was the second time a player had achieved this feat in Linian City. The first person to succeed in this was also Yizia, which he achieved by himself when he was making his way over. He made sure to follow the main road upon leaving the jungle. Despite his extensive knowledge, there was simply no way Yizia could change the fact that he had baby legs. It was already rather late by the time he reached his destination, and in comparison, Gufei was already long offline. Yizia did not make any other stops and just headed straight to the knight's barracks the moment he entered the city. Over by the knight's barracks in Beishi City, Silver Moon was sitting at the steps within the barracks alone. How many days had it been since he was stuck here? He could not even remember the exact number himself. All he knew was that he had not once gotten far from the barracks ever since he got slain while on the road to Linian City. On that fateful day, Silver Moon discovered that Dusky Cloud and his men were waiting right outside the barracks for him to appear. So how could he not know what the whole lot of them intended to do? Silver Moon already figured out that something was amiss the moment he saw those people standing by in advance. Afterward, when he attempted to motivate Oathless Sword and the others to lend him a hand, he was, instead, given the cold shoulder and soon received the system prompt, "This player is not accepting messages from anyone not in his friends list." Silver Moon felt as if he had fallen into a bottomless pit in that moment. Losing that helping hand, he was left wondering who else he could persuade into aiding him. Having carefully mulled over his situation once over, the shrewd Silver Moon very quickly realized that he had fallen prey to another's machinations. Furthermore, this plan devised was quite devious. It did not simply send him over to the spawn point for Dusky Cloud to camp him out. More importantly, it had ensured any hope of escape or assistance for him was ruined in the process. The boss of Traversing Four Seas had deleted him from his friends list. Silver Moon no longer put any hope in the man, but what about the comrades from his mercenary group? Even though he had abandoned those people in an attempt to first make his escape, Silver Moon had no one else to turn to, so he decided to harden his pride and give it a shot. In the end, before he could even fire off a message, he received a series of prompts as each member of his mercenary group left the group, with some even expressing their contempt and choice expletives before leaving. Silver Moon instantly became the only member of the Silver Moon mercenary group. He tried to privately message some of these players, but just like what had happened with Oathless Sword, All he received was the system prompt: "This player is not accepting messages from anyone not in his friends list." Young Masters Elite. Silvermoon grinded his teeth. Even though he did not know what sort of plan his adversary had devised, he had no doubt in his mind that the lot of them were the perpetrators for his current predicament. As a scum that abandoned his brothers in arms at such a critical period, Silvermoon still failed to realize that his action was what had caused everybody to desert him. Even as he started nursing a deep-seated resentment for someone else's plan enacted against him. "Looks like I can only depend on myself." Silvermoon spent a whole hour contemplating over how to get himself out of his current predicament, but still failed to come up with anyone else he could use. He even thought of groveling and begging vast lushness for help, but he ended up giving up on that as well. However, this was not because there was a limit to his scummy ways, but that he had a considerable understanding of vast lushness. He would only be inviting her to spit in his face if he looked to repent right now. Without any friends he could utilize, Silvermoon thought of approaching his enemy for a compromise. Dusky Cloud was about to fall asleep staking out at the knight's barracks when Silvermoon approached with a genial smile and made an effort to converse with the crowd. Silvermoon knew that Dusky Cloud's party had set their eyes on his valuable king's sword, so perhaps these people might be hunting him down so doggedly entirely because of his weapon. Silvermoon figured that he might find a peaceful resolution to this situation with that chip in hand. With a smile on his face, Silvermoon slowly expressed his idea. His gift of the gab was the real deal, so all sorts of idioms and phrases were thrown like "all it takes is a smile to melt away past enmity," "a real man must take heed of the grand scheme of things," "the world will be us for the taking if we work together." Every possible nauseating flattery he could come up with flowed with ease from his mouth to sweet talk Dusky Cloud until diabetes nearly set in. By the time he ran out of descriptive phrases, Silvermoon had taken the risk of stepping out the spawn point to show his sincerity in hopes of better bonding with Dusky Cloud. Dusky Cloud was immediately roused by this. Silvermoon thought that his rhetoric had succeeded in swaying the man, so he quickly reached out to shake the hand of Dusky Cloud. Dusky Cloud reached his hand out as well, albeit with his dagger in it. That stab was so vicious Dusky Cloud seemed to be wishing to punch a hole through Silvermoon's stomach. The whole lot of men with Dusky Cloud instantly surged toward their target, making it such that Silvermoon had no way of retreating as he got surrounded. It was murder, a righteous murder. These men had waited for a very long time. None of them could bear for it to end too quickly as everyone wanted to properly savor this moment. Aside from Dusky Cloud's original stab, the rest unequipped their weapons and proceeded to slowly shear off his HP with the lowest damage they could inflict, breathing him in as they sent him to his grave. In that moment, Silvermoon regretted his erroneous view of Dusky Cloud's character and reflected on his impulsive action, and lamented having an all-endurance build. The beating he received from this encirclement seemingly stretched on forever. Going on for several minutes in this fashion, plenty of those squeezing from the outside that did not manage to get their hits and even grew impatient with their fellow comrades eventually. Before he expired, Dusky Cloud spat a hawk of phlegm at Silvermoon. "Motherfucker, you've sure got plenty of rubbish to spout." The revived Silvermoon felt extremely miserable and furious. Yet he no longer dared to step out of the spawn point. With a belly full of impotent rage, Silvermoon wasted a round of saliva at the crowd of players waiting outside before finally logging off helplessly. Silvermoon could already tell that the hatred Dusky Cloud bore toward him had already gone beyond the material and was all completely spiritual at this point. There was no way Dusky Cloud would stop at just killing him once. The next day when he got online, Silvermoon gingerly observed the interior and exterior of the spawn point but discovered nothing. Silvermoon was naturally not about to keep himself holed up in the spawn point, so even though it was dangerous, it was a danger he had to take a chance with. Hence, he steeled his nerves and made his way right out of the spawn point. Safe. Silvermoon was prepared to take a step back to the spawn point at any time, but Silvermoon was beside himself with joy when he saw that no harm came to him. However, he took no more than 3 steps away from the knight's barracks when a whole bunch of stealthed thieves appeared, blocked off his retreat, surrounded him, and ganged up on him once more. Silvermoon tried his best to resist, but this bunch of men with Dusky Cloud used the same trick as before, surrounding the man as they slowly tormented him by attacking him without their weapons. But, this time, Some of them went a little overboard, and aside from just beating him up without weapons, a handful of them had actually taken off their armor and other equipment as well. They intended to fully savor every drop of HP from Silver Moon, by ensuring their equipment did not grant them any bonus in any sense while they beat the man up. Yet, how could the attack power from Silver Moon, who possessed the level 70 over level weapon King's Blade, be considered as child's play? Though, out of these naked thieves, one actually managed to die from Silver Moon's retaliation. This, of course, fueled further anger from the crowd. After bellowing, "This fucker actually dares to resist," these men became all the more brutal with their ravaging. Before Silver Moon died, his entire body got covered in their spittle. These men, who had not had their fill just from the punches and kicks alone, even made sure to spit on the man as well. Silver Moon was finally cowed and no longer dared to take any sort of risks. The man was afraid that these men might even use their noses next time, going as far as to add their nasal fluids into the mix. Silver Moon did not go online for several days ever since that incident, hoping that this would wear thin their patience a little. Furthermore, he no longer dared to make his way out of the spawn point openly after as well. Be it masking himself or changing his outfit, no matter what method he tried, Silver Moon would always end up being surrounded and trapped after taking a few steps out of the spawn point, succumbing to the inhumane encirclement once over. The man was in tears, for he knew that there was no way he could make it out of this spawn point at all. "Let's just waste time here, then." Silver Moon gritted his teeth and began to compete with their patience. Who knew where the man found a footstool from, but he began to spend his day sitting a step within the cordon of safety, leisurely suntanning as time passed. Dusky Cloud's men were, of course, dissatisfied watching him do this, but since the man was well within the safety of the spawn point, not even their spit could reach him. Silver Moon assumed a look of feigned ignorance and resolutely provoked these people in such a manner. Silver Moon, who had finally managed to get back at them in this way, soon realized how foolish his actions were. He would only have a chance of escaping from this quandary if he slowly whittled the patience of these men. Would he not just be poking the beehive more if he continued provoking them like this? Silver Moon ceased his action the moment he clearly thought this matter through. He, thus, began to control the amount of time he spent online, bearing in mind to only reveal himself for a moment each day to see how the situation was. In the end, matters took a turn for the worse. There were originally only those men that Dusky Cloud had sent, but after a few days, Silver Moon did not expect to see his old colleague, his ex-subordinate, Blueys, appearing with his men as well, and Blueys was of course not here to mount a rescue. When they met that day, he ruthlessly laid out Silver Moon's despicable past to the people present, continuing on even after Silver Moon logged off in a hurry. The next day that he logged on, Silver Moon discovered that plenty of players he barely recognized were looking at him with contempt, and even more groups of players outside the spawn point had assembled to kill him. Silver Moon was in tears again. Silver Moon thought of many other approaches, such as contacting other professional gamers from workshops in hopes of extricating himself from the mess he found himself in. Unfortunately, his name reached a point where his notoriety preceded himself and was being viewed as the #1 bastard in Parallel World. With such a heavy moniker hanging on his head, even workshops refused to work with him. While the players from workshops were in it for the money, it was important for them to maintain their image as well. Why would they be willing to stand beside the #1 bastard? Of course, if Silver Moon was willing to foot a high enough price, there would be people out there that would take this risk anonymously for the sake of profit. Alas, Silver Moon was no svelte dancer. Besides the fact that he was a little more despicable, he was really just a normal gamer and did not have anything particularly valuable on him. Give up his king's sword? That was Silver Moon's final bargaining chip. He believed that the value of his weapon alone was enough to spur many people into helping him. However, Silver Moon saw such a move as the last resort. When no other alternatives presented themselves to get him out of this, Silver Moon began to seriously consider using this as the situation continued. But it was in these last 2 days when he received a letter from this person known as Broken Water Arrow. This was not a letter that came through the game. Silver Moon did not have any opportunity to visit the in-game mailbox. Fortunately, he had left an SOS everywhere, detailing quite a few methods for people to get in contact with him. In the end, What he received were mostly the curses and disdain from the players in Parallel World. Just as he was feeling disheartened by this outcome, he suddenly came across that message from Broken Water Arrow. Chapter 545, Helping You Get Out of Trouble. Silvermoon did not take it to heart the first time Broken Water Arrow contacted him, because it was not the first time he had received such a message before. He eagerly got in touch with the other party, only to realize soon that it was nothing but an attempt to trick him into leaving the spawn point. Thankfully, the tempered Silvermoon was quick-witted and cautious enough, so he managed to scramble back into the safety of the spawn point at the last minute. That was why when he first received Broken Water Arrow's letter, Silvermoon did not particularly put much importance to it despite him reading and replying to it. He had yet to eliminate it as another attempt to entrap him. Even when he received the second correspondence, Silvermoon remained on guard like before. He did not receive a third letter from Broken Water Arrow, and just as he was commending himself for his good judgment, thinking that he had seen through the other party's trick and made him give it up, he received another letter from someone else by the name of Fleeting Smile, who claimed to be Broken Water Arrow's companion. This new correspondent said that he would personally make his way over to Beishi City and assist Silvermoon in his escape. Silvermoon was not jumping for joy yet because this was not the first time someone had asked him to meet face to face either. He had met others many times before. Nonetheless, Silvermoon, who was a master of sophistry, was no small fry that could easily be duped him into leaving the spawn point. To actually continue corresponding with me for more than 3 times, how unprecedented! Silvermoon muttered under his breath. This time, the man suddenly felt a bit of hope toward this, so he made sure to be online at the appointed time. Not long after, he received the system prompt for a friend request from Fleeting Smile, and they officially made contact with each other upon confirmation. The other party straightforwardly stated that he was on his way to Beishi City's Knights Barracks right now. "I'll be waiting," Silvermoon replied passively. It was not a lie that this ignited hope, but it was no more than 10%. The other 90% was still wariness. "I'm here." Silvermoon, who was waiting patiently inside the spawn point, received this message from Fleeting Smile. He immediately got up and gazed over to the entrance of the Knights Barracks. "Which one is you?" Silvermoon asked. This was a designated safe zone, a spawn point, and a designated log-off point. There was always plenty of foot traffic here, so the entrance would never be empty. "I'm waving at you," the person replied. Silvermoon immediately spotted a player that looked to be a priest, frantically waving his hand. Silvermoon quickly used appraisal on the player. "Level 36, priest." "Fuck." Silvermoon cursed. He did not even bother judging his equipment and just quickly stopped his appraisal. In MMOs, a high-level player was not necessarily someone powerful, but a powerful player had to be high-level. While there was not a significant difference between levels in Parallel World, Silvermoon simply did not believe that a noob that had yet to even advance his job class would be capable of any sort of greatness. He could no longer be bothered to pay attention to this person and was prepared to log off by now. "Did you see me? Where are you?" Just as Silvermoon was about to leave when he actually received a message from this man. Silvermoon glanced at this person once more and saw that he was waving his hand as he searched through the crowd. The moment his gaze locked onto where he was, he suddenly stopped. Their eyes met, and Silvermoon did not avoid it. This person stopped waving his hand as he walked over toward him. "Are you Silvermoon?" This man asked now that they were face to face with each other. Silvermoon nodded. Since he already got recognized by this priest, he figured that it would not hurt to see what tricks this man had up his sleeves. "Your situation looks pretty grim, yeah?" Yixiao looked around and saw that quite a lot of players were glaring at Silvermoon with scorn. Silvermoon was already used to this by now, so he was able to completely ignore all these looks, appearing entirely unconcerned. No, shit. If Silvermoon could still be feeling good about any of this, then he had probably lost his marbles. He did not even have the heart to fake a good mood right now. "I'm here to help," Yixiao said. "Oh, and what do you intend to do?" Silvermoon calmly asked. The person who had come to meet him face to face before had painted a beautiful picture with his words, but the gist of his words were, "Step outside for me first." Once bitten twice shy, when Silvermoon heard these words a second time, he immediately cursed the ancestors of that man right in front of his face. Right now, He was ready. The moment this noob said something similar, he would gladly release a litany of curses. Given the current situation you're in, I don't think anyone can get you out of this place by killing their way through, Yixiao said. Is that so? Silvermoon said. Yeah, probably. Just as Silvermoon expressed his doubts, Yixiao paused as well. That was because, at this very moment, both men had subconsciously thought of the same person at the same time, and a sort of indignant and sour look was shared by the two. Anyone will have trouble fighting their way through, but if it's that guy, he just might be able to do it. He's just too imbalanced. Yixiao thought. That motherfucker. Silvermoon first delivered the swear words and expletives he had previously prepared for Gufei's ancestors in his mind before he quietly waited for this person to say a word. But Yixiao did not say anything else. Quietly taking out a scroll from his dimensional pocket, he passed it over to Silvermoon. What's this scroll for? Silvermoon could not help asking. Teleportation scroll, Yixiao answered. Silvermoon was stunned, and his mind quickly put two and two together. This was a method that he had not yet come across since he got trapped in here. Could there be a trap already set up in the destination of this teleportation scroll? Goddammit. This must be someone Dusky Cloud has sent. To think that guy is willing to spend such an outrageous amount just to kill me. Silvermoon was in deep thought even as he saw Yixiao unfurl the scroll for him. Look carefully, it's blank. There are no coordinates here. Ah. Silvermoon was stunned. I'm sure you know, a teleportation scroll without coordinates written on it, to put it bluntly, means that it will randomly send you off. As such, there's no way for me to set up any sort of ambush after teleporting, Yixiao said. Silvermoon was stupefied. He had indeed heard about this rule. In order for Yixiao to dispel his doubts, he had displayed the blank scroll right before his eyes. Silvermoon carefully pored over the paper and saw that it was indeed a blank spell scroll without even a single word written on it. This is the real deal. His original shred of hope was now in full bloom, and Silvermoon, who had been quiet for the longest time, got very excited. He wished he could just hug this scroll and have a good cry on the spot. If you're still not at ease, perhaps you can provide me with a set of coordinates, and I'll write them down for you. Then we can both teleport out of here together, Yixiao proposed. Silvermoon thought about this proposition. However, I do suggest for these coordinates you provide to be somewhere far away, even better if it's outside Beishi City. I dare say that you'll very likely still be in danger no matter where you end up in this city. Yixiao said this even as he observed the stares Silvermoon were eliciting. Meanwhile, the fact that he was conversing with Silvermoon had caused these players to regard him strangely as well. Not within the area of Beishi City? Silvermoon became skeptical when he heard this. Isn't the teleportation scroll incapable of teleporting the user beyond the confines of the city it is used in? Don't you know about the rule? While it's true that a random teleport will not materialize the user anywhere beyond the range of the city, but there won't be any limitations if you personally fill in the scroll with a set of coordinates and teleport, Yixiao explained. Silvermoon was indeed unaware of this rule, and it was precisely his lack of knowledge of it that raised his suspicions. He was afraid that this person before him was attempting to take advantage of him because he was unfamiliar with the rules when it came to the usage of teleportation scrolls. Perhaps the moment he applied a set of coordinates that he could not teleport to, and the scroll failed in doing what it was supposed to do, causing the teleportation not to work, it could somehow create a situation where he would be sent back to the spawn point or something. This could possibly be another entrapment attempt his enemies could control. Yixiao could tell that Silvermoon was hesitating and chuckled. You don't seem to trust me. Then, just use the method from before and subject yourself to a random teleport. But let me remind you, there's a huge risk to attempting a random teleport. Ignoring the possibility of it sending you directly outside this very building, it can still very well teleport you to a location a mere yard from your current coordinates. Or it might also send you straight into a group of monsters in some high-level grinding map, killing you as a result. That's as good as not teleporting at all. Who knows? Maybe that's the only teleportation scroll I have on me. Can I fill in a set of coordinates somewhere here in this city? Silvermoon asked. Of course, you can, but I really hope you can confirm the safety of the location you fill in. Teleporting right out of the frying pan and into the fire, I doubt you wanna play with that possibility, huh? Yixiao asked back. Silver Moon was pained. He was not completely familiar with Beishi City, so that meant there was no way he would know a set of coordinates to fill the scroll with to materialize somewhere with no one around. Considering his infamy in this city, he suspected that he would be in grave danger as long as he teleported over to any location where even a single player was present. All this person had to do was shout, "Look, there's Silver Moon!" And a team of eager pickers would be quickly assembled to get him. "No, I can't choose any coordinates here in Beishi City." Silver Moon gritted his teeth. He agreed with Yixiao's assessment that teleporting anywhere within Beishi City would be fraught with grim possibilities. Teleporting in such a fashion would most likely be sending himself to death. If he was going to take a gamble, he believed that, given what this man had explained about the rules when it came to teleporting, it was better to target another city. "All right, I accept your suggestion," Silver Moon said finally. "In that case, I suggest you teleport yourself over to Linian City," Yixiao said. "Linian City? Why Linian City?" Silver Moon was immediately anxious. He felt that the likelihood of this being a trap increased as long as the decision making was not in his hands. "Bro, you actually haven't asked me yet why I am here to help you," Yixiao said. Silver Moon was instantly embarrassed when he heard this. Someone like him that always placed his own benefits before his word had actually forgotten to ask about the intentions this other player had for lending him a hand. He had truly let slip the strength of his character. "I need the power of your King's Blade. Of course, I don't want the equipment itself. I merely wish that you can work with us to take down a bunch of players. As for their names, I believe you've heard of them and won't refuse," Yixiao said. "Young Masters Elite." Silver Moon blurted out. Yixiao nodded. "You're an ally." Silver Moon was excited. The enemy of an enemy could very well be his friend. "You should know the prowess that group possesses, especially that man known as 1,000 Miles Drunk among them." Silver Moon repeatedly nodded and instantly became a lot more cordial with Yixiao. "Did those guys terrorize you as well?" "Terrorize? Well, your level." Silver Moon vaguely mumbled. He suddenly understood that this priest before him was no noob. He probably got targeted by that group of hooligans and was slain until he dropped to this level just like him. "Oh, that has got nothing to do with them. I simply haven't been playing too much previously. My goal is to cripple 1,000 Miles Drunk now that I'm in this game," Yixiao explained. "Oh, then, what are we waiting for? Let's go." Silver Moon hurried. "Don't be in such a rush. We're still waiting for another player. We'll leave together when that time comes," Yixiao said. Chapter 546, The Rules to Teleportation. "Who are you?" Silver Moon's keen nerves tensed up once more. This priest was already in such a terrible state, yet he still held the hope of having full control of the situation. Getting so stressed out every time something unexpected cropped up was truly taking an unnecessary toll on him. "A kindred spirit." Yixiao's answer was in accordance with Silver Moon's train of thought, yet the man merely ended up feeling confused by it. "Let's talk about the coordinates you wish to go first. I know you'll probably have your doubts again if you let me pick the coordinates," Yixiao said. "But Linian City's coordinates?" Silver Moon had never been to Linian City, so he had no idea what the coordinates there were like. "Are you just gonna believe what I tell you at face value? If you don't, just randomly find a friend over there and inquire about it," Yixiao said. Silver Moon was depressed once more. Why would he still have friends over there now? Even though his friends list had quite a few old comrades he had been acquainted with from previous games, he had never once gotten in contact with them in Parallel World. However, ever since the name Silver Moon propagated throughout the land, no matter who he attempted to contact, he would always receive the system prompt, "This player is not accepting messages from anyone not in his friends list." Yixiao could tell that Silver Moon was troubled by this, so he laughed and uttered a range of long coordinates. "You're not a newbie, right? I figure you know that these coordinates include the world map's coordinates that you're familiar with. You're not gonna suspect that I will be able to set up an ambush in such a large area now, will you?" Yixiao asked. "Oh, no, no, no." Silver Moon hurriedly said as he randomly picked a set of coordinates from within the range. Watching Yixiao write them down onto the teleportation scroll, Silver Moon's suspicions reared its head once more. "Wait, what are those extra numbers for?" That's Linian City's map code. Let me explain to you what that means. It's only the player's imagination that the world map of Parallel World is a complete realm that seamlessly connects every map together. Given the limitations of the servers currently in use, coordinates are confined to those in each city and its surrounding region in Parallel World. Thus, even though the map coordinates go all the way up to tens of thousands, the coordinates which the system recognizes are limited. I can't tell you specifically just how many they are. We'll just use an example. Let's say the coordinates limit is 2000, 2000, then coordinates 2001, 2001 will be a single position further than 2000, 2000, but the system will not recognize 2001, 2001 as a set of coordinates. At this time, the system will see the coordinates as 1, 1 since the coordinates are recognized in cycles of 2000. Furthermore, this cycle won't be repeated because each map out there has its own code. As long as I key in the right map code, the system won't mistakenly transport us to the wrong map. This map code that you see now belongs to Linian City. If I don't key in these numbers, the system will automatically default to the current map's map code. That means that, while what I'm filling in will be for Linian City's coordinates, the system will actually cycle the coordinates and will end up sending us to the corresponding coordinates here in Mage City instead. Get it? Silvermoon's mouth was wide open before he said after a beat, "I've never heard of such a rule before, nor did I hear anything about this map code." According to what you've just said, won't not knowing this map code means that you can't use teleportation scrolls to teleport across cities? Yixiao shook his head. Looks like you've really never used a teleportation scroll before. When most players teleport across cities, the user will be first required to take the scroll to the position where they wish to teleport and record its coordinates there. This way, the system can store the hidden data of the map code into the scroll, so no matter where it will be activated later, the user can accurately reach the map coordinates they have written in. And because you're aware of the map code itself, you don't need to use such a method to teleport? That's right. Just who in the world are you? Silvermoon was astounded. He had never heard that bunch of information this man had just spouted about map coordinates, yet this priest seemed to know it so well Silvermoon could already sense that he was far from ordinary. "I'm just someone who has a greater understanding of how this game works, that's all," Yixiao answered. Are you an internal employee of the game?" Silvermoon was no fool, and the very technical understanding this man had displayed to him was something that went well beyond what the average player could discover through practical trial and error with the game. Yixiao did not answer him, merely placing the scroll right before Silvermoon's eyes once more. "Take a good look, the numbers in the front are the map code for Linian City. The coordinates behind it are what you've chosen as our destination." Silvermoon knew that the priest was trying to change the subject, so he did not attempt to inquire further. Taking a look at the coordinates once more, he asked, "Then, why isn't the man we're waiting for here yet?" Silvermoon's anxiety acted up again. It had been quite some time. What if people set up an ambush at the coordinates shown? Could this sort of person be lying in wait to take him down like a scorpion? Was he purposefully buying time? Was everything he had said before true or false? Silvermoon felt as if blood were leaking out from his orifices after thinking so much, yet he heard that man answer, "He's here." Silvermoon turned to look in the direction Yixiao was gazing at and saw someone walk through the entrance of the knight's barracks. The moment Silvermoon saw this man, he was surprised. "It's you." That person also caught sight of Silvermoon, but his eyes quickly darted over to Yixiao who was standing right beside him. "You guys." Silvermoon took 2 steps backward, distancing himself from Yixiao. This was because he had seen this newcomer before, and he was someone with dusky cloud. He was one of those thieves that had taken his equipment down and had dutifully spit on his face when everything was happening. "Oh, do you two know each other?" While Yixiao understood Silvermoon's situation, he did not know just who Silvermoon's enemies actually were. "Are you two together?" Silvermoon spat. The newcomer stared at Yixiao, as if he was waiting for the man to answer. Yixiao looked at the two. "Do the two of you have past enmity?" The thief looked at Silvermoon. "I was merely executing my guild's matters." Silvermoon wrinkled his brows and regarded the current situation. This person seemed to have been invited here by this priest just like himself, But why must it coincidentally be this person? Just what was so special about this thief? Silver Moon could more or less recognize those experts under Dusky Cloud, yet he had never once seen this man before. Silver Moon, who had always considered this man to be a shrimp, only remembered the latter's face because he was always at the front line in those times he got surrounded. "I've invited the two of you here for the same reason," Yixiao said. Silver Moon quickly connected the dots. "You have a feud with young Master's Elite as well? Someone under Dusky Cloud's command should not have any sort of issues with that bunch." So Silver Moon found this to be very strange. "My name's No Smile," the thief said as a form of explanation. Silver Moon had an immediate realization. This person is a scum, too. He was the first person whose name propagated across Parallel World after having been slain by Thousand Miles Drunk. Furthermore, Thousand Miles Drunk was known back then under the moniker Fugitive 27149. Speaking of which, had it not been for his relentless slaughtering of No Smile, that mage would not have needed to run all the way to I City to abscond from his pursuers. All in all, Silver Moon would not be in such a pitiful and sad situation now. Upon recalling this point, Silver Moon really wished he could just viciously throw a punch or two at the perpetrator. "Alright, I feel that we should leave this place first before we continue our discussion." Yixiao realized that when No Smile came forward and interacted with the two of them, more and more players were eyeing them with great suspicion. "How are we leaving?" No Smile asked. As someone who had participated in the targeted killing of Silver Moon, he was all the clearer as to just how fierce the ambush waiting outside for the man was. "Teleportation. Stand over here, you two." Yixiao unfurled the teleportation scroll. No Smile was naturally not very concerned and just immediately stepped forward. Silver Moon acted all furtively and hesitantly before finally making his decision. He figured that he had already gambled his life so many times that another count would not hurt, so he gritted his teeth and stepped toward Yixiao as well. The moment the scroll landed on the ground, the white light from the teleportation array instantly shone forth. Those players that had a slow reaction barely even realized what was happening as a pillar of white light shot upward, and the three men disappeared in that same instant. Many players, concealed in the dark, up on the roof, or even those taking cover behind corners, had their eyes on Silver Moon this whole time. The moment he disappeared, all of them stepped out from their position and surrounded the wake of their disappearance, exchanging glances with one another. Was that a teleportation scroll? At the current age, more and more players knew what was on the up and up. Who were those guys? Where were they from? To actually go to such expense? Someone asked, looking all around. "Yeah, is that bastard even worth it?" Another quipped. Teleportation scrolls were a rare commodity and were worth a lot. In the end, after the various group representatives from those that had set up their ambush outside the spawn point expressed their opinions, all of them made a discovery: none of those present had thought of using such an extravagant method like the activation of a teleportation scroll to deal with Silver Moon. After all, ganging up on the man was everyone's favorite pastime, so no one would ever need to squirrel him away for their personal enjoyment. Most groups that had seized the opportunity would be celebrating their elation, so with no one stepping forth to claim this honor, this only meant that that occurrence was not any of their doing. Could it be that someone actually went and rescued that trash bag? Someone supposed. Fuck, no way. Someone would actually save that sort of scum? Who's so shameless? Another raged. Did anyone notice who were those people with him before? Another asked. "There's a priest that I don't recognize." "I thought that he is one of your men." "And I thought he is yours." "I thought they are yours." "That thief that joined at a later time, isn't that guy one of your men?" Someone pointed to the people from the 10 Guild Alliance. After spending so many days together here, everyone was more or less familiar with one another and had gotten to know where those people had come from. Everyone was very impressed at their dedication for having made the trip all the way to Beishi City just to hunt down Silver Moon. The men from the 10 Guild Alliance exchanged glances. After all, there were still many battles back in Y City for them to handle. Dusky Cloud himself, as the chief boss of the 10 Guild Alliance, could not play along with camping Silver Moon out like this. Fortunately, there were plenty of players in their organization that had expressed their enthusiasm to kill Silver Moon. The leader of their delegation for the last 2 days here was his comrade Celestial Pig. Having suffered the bullying of Silver Moon and his men in the past, Now that their fates had been reversed, the former was of course more than happy to kick Silvermoon while he was down, yet who would have thought that something like this would happen within these 2 days upon him coming over here? Old Cloud, Silvermoon got rescued. Celestial Pig quickly sent this message to Dusky Cloud. Fuck, motherfucker. You goddamn coward. How did you let that man escape when it's your turn to man the post? Can't you show a bit of promise at least? Dusky Cloud cursed. It's not my fault. Someone procured a teleportation scroll and whisked him away, Celestial Pig protested. Fuck. Who's the asshole that would go so far just to save a scum? Dusky Cloud was in shock. Not just that. One of our men teleported along with them. It was No Smile. Chapter 547, Birds of the Same Feather. No Smile. Dusky Cloud muttered this name. He had rather complicated feelings toward that man. Back in the days before Parallel World came to be, the two of them were sworn brothers that had gone through quite a number of MMOs together. During that time, all they would do was converse with each other over voice chat a little. The impression Dusky Cloud got of the man was fairly favorable back when they were still using such indirect means of communication. He knew a bit about the history between No Smile and July, but since Dusky Cloud was the type of person to keep to his own business, he believed that there was no reason for him to interfere in that foolish matter between the two. Furthermore, given how he believed in the spirit of brotherhood, he saw no reason to ask about the situation too much. They remained in contact with each other even after entering Parallel World by adding each other to their friends list upon creating their account. However, because the structure of Parallel World was still murky and unknown back then, the two ended up in different cities. Neither had any clue as to how they could meet and had no choice but to survive on their own at first. In the end, the situation that both parties had found themselves in were rather dramatic. No Smile quickly managed to join the largest guild in Yunjuan City as one of its core members from the start, and that was a considerably glamorous achievement. This was during the time when Silvermoon's guild, Past Deeds, was tyrannizing Y City, and Dusky Cloud's guild had a hard time contending with such an antagonist. However, everything was turned on its tail once the matter between No Smile and July ignited once more. It just so happened that July's small guild had an indomitable player who caused the bastard, No Smile, to experience the bitterest taste of defeat. With his level 30 dropping all the way down to level 20, starting that level dropping legend in Parallel World, his name became synonymous to the word loser. This record had yet to be broken by any other, so his name was still on everyone's lips even now. No Smile's future in Yunjuan City was ruined in that instant, and because he was guilty, he had no choice but to run all the way over to Y City. And that was when Dusky Cloud demonstrated his brotherly loyalty in that moment. He could barely fend for himself then, yet he still willingly tried helping his sworn brother take revenge on his killer. It was almost as if every player in Parallel World knew what had happened. After this, Dusky Cloud became the boss of Y City even as No Smile got cast down. However, it was this series of events that connected Yunjuan City and Y City, as No Smile's first move was to seek asylum with his comrade once he could no longer make a living in Yunjuan City. That incident with No Smile had caused quite a stir, and the old scores between the two were all unearthed and gossiped about. It was just a step away from being published into a music video. Dusky Cloud truly treated the man as his brother, but having heard of the rumors as well, he had a change of opinion about the man. And since the comrades he now hung out with was the straightforward sort, upon learning of what type of person this No Smile was, each of them began to regard him with contempt as they shunned such a criminal. All this time, No Smile was formally seen by his other comrades as the #1 cad, while Silvermoon, who had abandoned Vast Lushness as he fled, was only just beginning to be received with a similar sentiment. Dusky Cloud was a little disappointed when it came to the sort of characteristic No Smile had. To them, while Vast Lushness was the sort of player that left them all grinding their teeth, it was not to the point where they scorned her, since they were all cut from the same cloth. Showing disdain to her was as good as showing disdain to themselves. Conversely, how No Smile acted was ideologically different, and the way he went about doing things was incompatible. No Smile happily threw his lot in with Dusky Cloud, but all the latter's other comrades from the 10 Guild Alliance already had a strong first impression of the man. Even though none of them said anything because they were being thoughtful toward Dusky Cloud, Everyone felt hypocritical whenever No Smile called them brother. At first, No Smile had chalked up their treatment of him to having just been acquainted and everyone being rather unfamiliar with him. However, over time, how could he not feel the cold regard they had for him? He could even sense the gradual estrangement that appeared between him and his old pal, Dusky Cloud. No Smile had spent those days bitterly. Despite all the icy words he was receiving, he persevered and worked tirelessly by participating in all the activities that the guild organized. Take for example that incident of hunting down vast lushness all the way to Yunjuan City. A good number of players were too lazy to do it. Yet someone who had no hatred for vast lushness joined in as well. Unfortunate for him, even after doing all those things, everybody still did not warm up to him. Having borne everything so barefaced for so long, No Smile sure had no intention of continuing to be treated so poorly. Seeing that nothing had changed for the better even after spending so much time hanging around them, he started considering forging his own path out from under Dusky Cloud's wing. He could only fault that, even with how huge the 10 Guild Alliance's area of influence was, and the unity they had went well beyond his belief. It was like they were all of one mind, and their attitude toward him was all the same. No Smile had spent quite a lot of time around these people, yet he had not even managed to make friends with anyone at all. Everything about this made him feel extremely ashamed. It was at this time when he received Yizia and Broken Water Arrow's invite. Considering that he had not even managed to earn a bit of favor from Dusky Cloud and his men here, and that Dusky Cloud had become more and more distant, as well as how he was not as indecisive and paranoid like Silver Moon, it was only natural for him to give them his straightforward answer. He was originally intending to head over to Linian City himself when he first came in contact with them, but upon learning that the other party was heading over to save Silver Moon as well, No Smile decided to take this chance to see what this person could accomplish. Perhaps he could demonstrate the value of having him around by lending a hand or being their spy. In the end, this person's solution to extricating Silver Moon was really simple, and it was actually through the utilization of a teleportation scroll. Even though it was simple, it could be seen as a huge gesture, and his action showed his sincerity toward their recruitment. While Silver Moon was still thinking about taking the plunge with the scroll, No Smile already made up his mind at the sight of that scroll, and he heartily joined the two in leaving for Linian City. Silver Moon was the one who had picked the coordinates, and there was no way for Yizia to remember just what would be present in every set of coordinates. Still, he did have a good idea as to what to expect within that area. It just so happened that Silver Moon had picked a set of coordinates that were right in the city, which therefore saved them traveling time. The moment their feet touched the ground, Silver Moon could hardly wait to register his account in this new city. He did not wish to accidentally die and find himself back at Beishi City's Knights Barracks again. Silver Moon bro, wait for me, we'll go together. This was also the first time No Smile was here, so it was only natural that he would have to register his account as well. Then, I'll leave you two to it. I'll reach out to you guys later. Yizia told the two. Thank you very much. Silver Moon at least did not forget to express his gratitude. Both parties parted, watching Yizia walk off into the distance. No Smile immediately asked Silver Moon, bro, what do you think is that guy's background? Hard to tell. He's of a low level and his equipment are all nothing to write home about, but he's quite knowledgeable about the game, Silver Moon replied. Oh, what did he talk to you about? No Smile asked. A whole lot of things. I only got a ballpark idea of what he was talking about. Despite his doubt in what Yixiao was saying before, the fact still remained that he had truly been rescued from the Knights Barracks and was now in a different city safe and sound. Thus, he at least believed that Yixiao's previous words were factual. How did you get in touch with that man? Silver Moon asked. He's the one that sought me out, something about 1,000 miles drunk, No Smile replied. Yeah, same as me. Silver Moon nodded. What do you think? I reckon that 1,000 miles drunk had offended that person, so he's rounding up players to contend with that mage. I think that's also why he approached people like us, it's because we have existing enmity with 1,000 miles drunk. No Smile shared his deduction. Yes, that makes sense. Silver Moon nodded. Do you agree with my thinking as well, Silver Moon bro? No Smile asked. feeling that Silvermoon was holding something back. Yes, on one hand, that man might have a bad blood with Miles, on the other hand, I feel that he has a unique familiarity with the game. Silvermoon shared his supposition as well. Unique familiarity? What do you mean by that? No Smile hurriedly asked. Silvermoon lowered his voice. I suspect he might be an internal game employee. Game employee. They shouldn't be able to play this game. No Smile had quite the scare. They were all veteran gamers and were well acquainted with this rule. Perhaps he's not with a game company, but in a word, it's like he has his back channels. He's someone who has knowledge of the game data from behind the scenes, Silvermoon said. If you put it that way. No Smile seemed to have a thought. Bro, share your view. Silvermoon snickered darkly. If he's really someone like that, it isn't bad if we team up with him, No Smile said. Yes. Still, we need to get a feel of the man, find out just how much information and knowledge he has and what sort of plan he's got in mind, Silvermoon said. It's not going to be an easy task if we do intend to clash with Thousand Miles Drunk, said No Smile. While it had been quite some time since he came into contact with Gouffé, would there really be anyone in Parallel World that would be unaware of just how illustrious Gouffé had gotten? Those guys that Miles hangs out with aren't easy to deal with, either. Silvermoon came across them a little later, so he was fortunate enough to experience the full prowess of young Master's elite in action. Still, looking at that priest, he seems pretty confident. No Smile reasoned. Yeah, which is why we must be all the more vigilant. We need to separate the chaff from the wheat and find out what's worth reaping. Against someone of Miles, we'll be able to casually take him down by the time we're powerful enough, don't you think? Silvermoon asked. Oh, yes. No Smile nodded repeatedly. The two men shared a raucous laugh together, feeling a bit of excitement igniting in their hearts. It's been such a long time. These two were submerged in the looks of contempt from others and had been cast aside, so even casually sharing a word or two with someone became a luxury. Things were different now, though. This man here speaks the same language as mine. These two men thought at the same time. Let's hurry and register our accounts here before our life strays us from it. Now that their friendship had deepened, No Smile immediately began to show concern for Silvermoon. Yes. What's your level now, bro? Silvermoon was now merely level 36, so his appraisal skill was useless when used on No Smile. 41, No Smile replied. Even though the others had given him the cold shoulder, at least he had not been viewed as an enemy and hunted like one. As someone in Y City's 10 Guild Alliance, No Smile had a rather easy time grinding monsters and questing, which was also the reason why he had shamelessly stayed. No Smile was more than familiar with the saying, a big tree provides good shade. That's really good. Silvermoon sighed. I'm miserable in comparison, I'll have to really do a mad grind. No need to rush. Levels aren't the most important thing, anyway, No Smile consoled. Besides, you've got King's Sword, Silvermoon bro. That weapon is pretty much priceless. Unfortunately, I can no longer use my King's Sword, Silvermoon confessed. Why is that? No Smile exclaimed. The teams that had been hunting the man all this while attached great importance to that weapon and had not heard of anyone successfully looting it from Silvermoon. Don't tell this to others, Silvermoon whispered. But I dropped a piece of equipment when I died before, and now I can't meet the King's Sword's aptitude requirement, so I can't use its skill. Chapter 548, Equipment with Command. While the two of them were opportunistic in nature, they were also good at making friends. Now that they had acknowledged each other as brothers in arms, Silvermoon also acted as how a comrade should and retrieved his King's Blade from his dimensional pocket for No Smile to take a look. No Smile would, of course, have no problems appraising Silvermoon, and with that one look, he could see that, aside from the high sword aptitude requirement of King's Blade, there was yet another tough requirement he had to meet, 25 command. Anyone that had a bit of knowledge about Parallel World would be aware that a player's command stat was critical for a party leader. With 1 point in command, a leader could create a 10-man party. Any starting player would have 1 point, and those who often got selected as the leader would accumulate experience toward the stat. But the problem was that the limit of this stat at the current stage of the game was 9. Apparently, players would have to search for other means to acquire the necessary experience points to further increase it, and no one was currently aware just what other means there were. No Smile, who had spent a long time in the company of Dusky Cloud and his lot, naturally heard about the matters pertaining to Silver Moon. He knew that this man had been able to triumphantly swing his King's Blade in Y City at level 30, that could only mean that he had already reached the necessary requirement for the blade's use at level 30. Achieving the necessary sword aptitude for King's Blade was not actually a tall task because many players knew that there were equipment out there that boosted masteries, traits that gave masteries, and other equipment that significantly increased players' proficiencies. As for Silver Moon, for him to have gotten a hold of such an item at level 30, just showed how much of a forerunner he once was. And regarding this 25 command stat that the man needed to meet, No Smile reckoned that it had been possible through the use of other equipment, which Silver Moon had unfortunately lost. Seeing that Silver Moon still had his equipment that granted him sword mastery, his sword proficiency must be sufficient. Thus, all that he was missing was the 25 command stat. Silver Moon bro, you have a piece of equipment that has command? No Smile asked, despite not having heard of this sort of equipment. Yup, I owned a necklace that grants me plus 20 command called the Torque of Leadership, but I've sadly dropped it. Damn it. To think I managed to drop it even though I've stored it in my dimensional pocket. How goddamn unlucky. I hope that the guy who has picked it up meet a fate worse than death. Silver Moon cursed. The chance of dropping items upon death in Parallel World was much lower when the player in question had no park points to speak of, and the chance of dropping an item in the dimensional pocket was even lower than that. I've never heard of such equipment before. It should be pretty hard to get a hold of. Yeah? No Smile asked. Silver Moon nodded. That fleeting smile guy searched for me and explicitly mentioned that it is because he needs the power of my King's Blade. I've yet to tell him that I can't activate the Swords and Blade skill. But since you've successfully gotten out of your mess from before, you should tell him about it so that we can see how he will handle this. If that person truly has access to insider information, he should be able to help you obtain this sort of gear or maybe even show you a way to directly raise your command stat. No Smile said. Yeah, that's what I'm thinking of doing right now as well. Silver Moon nodded. Yi Xiao was not in the least bit surprised when he received this news from Silver Moon, and he was completely aware of what the requirements to the King's Blade were. Sword aptitude was not a particularly difficult stat to obtain, especially at this stage of the game. Reaching 25 command was the key here. Yi Xiao had appraised Silver Moon's equipment and discovered he did not own anything that boosted his command. As for Silver Moon only informing him about this after he got rescued, Yi Xiao was not particularly bothered by it. Instead, it was Broken Water Arrow who expressed his discontent. He's scum all right. Yi Xiao patted him on his back. That may be the case, but we still need to help the man. Being able to unleash King's Blade meant that we can forego quite a bit of manpower. How are we gonna do that? Help him increase his command? Broken Water Arrow asked. That's impossible, Yi Xiao denied flatly. Increasing a player's command will require unlocking the prestige system. That would also require the game world to make a breakthrough in a particular content, and we can't touch that. So, what do we do? Broken Water Arrow asked. This equipment of his couldn't be taken back by the system, right? He must have lost it when he got cked, which meant that another player out there must have gotten a hold of it. I wonder if there's any news of it being put up for sale in the market. It will of course be best if we can just buy it back with money, Yi Xiao mused. If he dropped it, that must be back in Beishi City. Did you not take a look along the way? Broken Water Arrow asked. Yi Xiao laughed bitterly. I came back here straight after meeting up with him. Besides, that rascal only told me about not being able to attain the requirement for it after we reached Linian City. You've even shown your disdain over him for it. Then, that means we'll have to make a trip back to Beishi City, Broken Water Arrow said. Yi Xiao nodded. Head over to the market and take a look around. Inquire after it, and I'll head over to the forums and make a request to purchase it. Currently, the need for the command stat has yet to reach such high levels, and players aren't fully clear to the value of this stat, so there won't be much use for that item. Hopefully that guy who picked up the equipment wouldn't have too much of a foresight to hold on it. Is there only this one piece of equipment in the game right now? Broken Water Arrow asked. How would I know? Yi Xiao laughed mirthlessly. He was no more than a normal player right now, knowing something like this would require him to check the backend data, therefore, there was no way he would know the answer to that question. Logically speaking, this sword equipment should not appear in the current stage of the game, but acquiring over-level equipment was a huge feature in Parallel World, and that was something that had to do with the famous chain quest system. The random lot of quests had an extremely strong degree of freedom when linking up to form chain quests, but it could not be denied that sometimes there would be players out there that just happened to be really lucky, getting a chain quest made up of a string of easy quests. Despite there being a boss at the end of the chain to ensure difficulty in the final stage, with how randomly these chains were constituted, that did not mean that the prize would all be concentrated at the end. Take Gufei's chain quest as an example. Moonlit Nightfalls and the Midnight Spirit Robe were the final reward, but Eddie's emblem, the sacred he got on his flames of baptism, were also considered as quest rewards, yet he had obtained them all in the early stages of the chain quest. "I'll make a trip over to Bayshit City then," Broken Water Arrow said. Yi Xiao was not courteous as well. After all, the man's job class was better suited for making the trip, and it would be far more efficient and faster. After Silver Moon and No Smile registered their accounts to the spawn point over in Linian City, both men anxiously awaited Yi Xiao's reply together. Soon, Silver Moon was a little excited after receiving the message and told No Smile, "That guy said he'll deal with it. What a capable guy." No Smile was impressed as well. "I wonder where he'll get it?" Silver Moon mused. No Smile naturally wanted to know about this as well. The two men shared the same sentiment that acquiring equipment was nothing significant, but if they were able to get a grasp of the process, they would find themselves a path to riches. Silver Moon gingerly probed Yi Xiao about this. Of course, he did not express it explicitly but tactfully mentioned how he wanted to help. Since the man was helping him acquire command, he felt responsible to lend a hand at least, hoping that the man would not treat him like an outsider and call him about it. In the end, Silver Moon had no idea how he should react when he heard Yi Xiao's answer. Damn. So much for him being capable. It turns out that he intends to buy it back. No Smile was disappointed as well but still consoled himself. At least, that shows that the man has substantial funds to his name. Silver Moon, however, shook his head. Actually, what use is there to something like the command stat right now? Only a dozen or so players are needed when organizing parties to grind. 2 points is more than enough. As for organizing a group to PvP, Parallel World system doesn't exempt friendly fire, so there's no need to even group up for that. Recognizing one another is far more important. Honestly, the only use of having a large party is when participating in a large-scale battle. Still, even then, all a guild or mercenary group needed was a handful of players with high enough command. Thus, the equipment with the command stat can be deemed as a niche demand, so unless it's very difficult for players to acquire equipment that has command, it's utterly worthless otherwise. So, is it difficult to acquire such equipment? No Smile gazed at Silver Moon. Silver Moon's tragic expression was more than enough to answer that question. "Where did you get it from, anyway?" No Smile asked. "A chain quest that I've yet to finish till now. It is the initial reward I was given. All that quest required me to do was run some errands. I didn't even have to fight a single battle. That alone speaks volumes of how difficult it is," Silver Moon replied. "A chain quest. Just getting that alone is hard enough." No Smile exclaimed. Silver Moon shrugged. "In any case, I don't think I can progress any further from the current stage of the quest, so if that guy is willing to purchase the item for an exorbitant sum, I do believe he'll be able to quickly get a hold of it." No Smile nodded and casually patted Silver Moon. "Then, let him do that for you." "Shall we head to grind or quest?" "Let's take a look around the city first." "Have you been here before?" Silver Moon asked back. "Nope." "Take a look around it is." These two left the spawn point together and began to stroll down the main street, getting along well like two peas in a pod. Yi Xiao and Broken Water Arrow were currently rather busy themselves. Yi Xiao logged off and went to the trade forums in an attempt to purchase equipment that boosted the command stat. Blankly putting up his post and refreshing, in the end, no one replied after the longest time, with even some old-timers feigning knowledge mocked him by commenting that it was unlikely for anyone to have kept such equipment. Yi Xiao was originally composed, but he watched as his topic digressed into a discussion about the command stat, and people started to express their opinions about it. The only thing they all had in agreement was that players who would care to buy such equipment would probably be off their rockers. Yi Xiao was pissed. He watched as his topic got derailed for 5 pages, with not a single seller in sight. In accordance to the trade forum rules here, players could only talk about buying and selling, so it should not have gone off topic like this. Yi Xiao complained to the moderators in his annoyance, and these moderators were truly well qualified for their jobs, as one of them quickly replied to his complaint, "Just chat and go with the flow." Yi Xiao did not know if he should be laughing or crying. This moderator was even someone he knew from the company, and he reckoned that he had probably spent a long period of moderating the dull trade forum and was likely bored being all alone there. It was rare for a thread to digress like this that it became something worth cherishing. Soon, Yi Xiao even got his thread stick-eyed on top of the trade forum and highlighted for all to view. Yi Xiao really wished he could just head over and give his former colleague a good beating. Yi Xiao was drowning in these off-topic discussions the whole night, but the online broken water arrow did not have any better luck on his end, either. He searched through every stall in Beishi City's marketplace, asked around, and even headed to check the trade exchange and the auction house along the way. He was not like Yi Xiao, sitting down behind the monitor and refreshing the page with a click of a button. Broken water arrow had to run back and forth checking for updates, which was far more exhausting than what Yi Xiao did in any sense. Unfortunately, neither of them had any results to show for after a night of work. That person who picked up Silver Moon's Torque of Leadership looked to have kept the equipment, thinking it was a rare item. After a whole night of searching, the two men messaged each other in the morning, reporting the miserable night they had spent respectively. This conclusion was more or less what the two had already expected. If any of them acquired what they needed, would they wait up to this moment to inform each other about it? Meanwhile, Silver Moon was truly shameless. Having a fun time playing around in Linian City the whole night, he unabashedly messaged Yi Xiao first thing in the morning when he saw the man was online. "How is it, bro? Did you get the equipment with the command stat yet? Fucking hell. You're really quite the bastard." Yi Xiao almost replied with this. Chapter 549, Offline Trade. A long off-topic thread appearing on the trade forums might not be any big news, but Brother Assist, who treated the forums as his home, still managed to discover this situation. Originally, he was simply curious and went in for a look, but upon seeing that it was a request to buy a piece of equipment that increased the command stat, which the current players had no use for, Brother Assist could not help but be stunned. Brother Assist's understanding came to the same conclusion that Silver Moon had explained to No Smile. At the current stage of the game, the 9 command points players had was more than enough. Yet there was someone out there that required a higher command value. Brother Assist quickly logged into the game and took out that little booklet of information of his and began flipping through it. He soon located the equipment information he recorded about the King's Blade, something Gufei had told him about after asking Vast Lushness on his behalf. Sure enough, one of the stat requirements for King's Blade was 25 command. Sword Demon, Young Master Han, and the others were already online at this time. So Brother Assist quickly informed them of this huge discovery. "This is the only time I came across a requirement for command." Could the person looking to purchase the equipment be Silver Moon? Couldn't you tell from his forum ID? The people asked. "That's already no longer accurate," Brother Assist said. Players did not need to apply for an account to use the forums as it was directly linked to their player account, and this seemed to be a way the game company used to prevent people from having alts one. However, in reality, while logging into Parallel World required the players themselves to do so, logging into their forum accounts did not need such strict verifications. As long as someone knew the account's password, anyone could use someone's ID to go into the forums and assume a different identity. Naturally, not everyone playing the game would delve into the game and stick with it. Quite a number of players gave up after a while, and while they were unable to transfer the account to anyone else, a good number of players had homed in on collecting these accounts to use as alts on the forums. Meanwhile, There were all sorts of reasons why some players needed these alts. Take Brother Assist as an example. The man already had 2 alts in his hands. For a player that often spent his time trawling through the forums, he would simply be throwing his face if he did not even have a single alt account on deck. Silver Moon is still alive? Royal God Call asked. People like War Without Wounds and him only inquired what was happening with Silver Moon after he got sent to Beishi City out of interest. By now, they had already forgotten all about Silver Moon after hearing about the man's first few deaths. It's very possible for this person to be Silver Moon. That guy already managed to flee from Beishi City's Knights Barracks, Sword Demon shared. Dusky Cloud informed me of this news last night. That guy has been stuck in the spawn point all this time? Royal God Call was astonished. Yup. Then what's his level right now? 36. Sword Demon replied. Silver Moon could use the inlaid skill of King's Blade before, which means that his command stat was at 25 points then, and that's only possible with equipment that increases it. Unfortunately for him, in that period he's being spawn camped, his equipment that increases his command stat must have dropped during one of those deaths. Right now, he can no longer activate his King's command. This explains why there's a post that's asking to purchase one such equipment. Brother Assist analyzed. That makes sense, the crowd agreed. How did Silver Moon escape? Young Master Han suddenly asked. Someone came and whisked him away their encirclement using a teleportation scroll. Dusky Cloud said that it was a priest. He had also teleported another player that we are all familiar with. No smile. Sword Demon shared. A priest? These professional gamers immediately thought of the same person. Could it be that guy? They've already more or less treated this guess of theirs as a fact. If it is really that guy, saving Silver Moon and bringing No Smile along can only mean that he's coming after us, young Master Han said. To think that he'd actually collect those scumbags to help him. Royal God Call scoffed. They've already crossed swords with us before, so they don't need much convincing, Brother Assist reasoned. Still, to get that sort of guys, they'll surely be the first to run off at the first sign of trouble. Young Master Han said. Definitely. They were all very confident of Silver Moon's character. As for No Smile, the only impression they had of the man was his tenacity. Knowing that he was no match for Gufei, instead of quickly logging off, the man actually kept trying his luck, getting himself slain until he lost 10 levels in the process. Everybody did not have a good grasp of the significance of strength in the early days of the game, especially against an extraterrestrial existence like Gufei. For No Smile to actually try measuring the man by mortal standards, the lesson learned was actually a bloody one. Silver Moon, No Smile, Cool Apple, and that broken water arrow. On paper alone, this lineup looks to be rather formidable. Royal God Call raised a finger for each player mentioned. Both Silver Moon and Cool Apple aren't level 40, Brother Assist reminded. No Smile's a little skilled, but he's just the average expert. He's not really up to par with someone like Cool Apple, much less Broken Water Arrow, Sword Demon added. That's the No Smile we know from way back. Who knows how much the man has changed by now? Brother Assist countered. That makes sense. Sword Demon immediately accepted Brother Assist's perspective on this, superseding what he thought of No Smile moments before. The problem here is that we have Miles on our side, Royal God Call said. It's just so pointless. War Without Wounds said. It's just not challenging if they don't throw everything but the kitchen sink at us. The times when Miles will log on is already an open secret to those who know him. Adding the fact that he has fleeting smile in his friends list, it's very likely they can use the opportunity to attack us while Miles isn't around to weaken us accordingly before they concentrate on dealing with Miles, Brother Assist said. We shouldn't underestimate that fleeting smile, either. He might not have the ability to go head to head against us, but who knows what sort of unknown, strange equipment or skills he might be capable of procuring, said Sword Demon. While he had successfully defeated Cool Apple, he still had his reservations regarding that guy's shadow step. This sort of over-leveled skill was truly far too powerful. That's right, that's the most frightening aspect he brings to the table, young Master Han said. Furthermore, from his actions and line of thinking, if he's looking for helpers, we can infer that he's not likely to stop short at finding Silver Moon and No Smile. They're not the only two who have past grievances with us. Southern Lone Blade. Everyone immediately thought of this name. The man had been their most recent adversary. Southern Lone Blade was indeed far more fearsome as he had a complete team under his command, and his group was no weaker than young Master's elite. If Gufei was removed from the equation, with him logging on at night for such a brief period only, even though they were all under level 40 at the moment, as long as Fleeting Smile outfit them a little, they would indeed be a troublesome bunch to handle. That's why I say, the policy I've always stuck to is indeed the right choice, young Master Han said. Policy? When do you have a policy? Everyone was confused. Never engage the enemy passively, always take the initiative like what we did to take down Cool Apple. Young Master Han said. Are they looking for Silver Moon and No Smile for help? Very good. We'll first take care of those two guys right now. But where are we going to find them? The others asked. Isn't Silver Moon looking to purchase that equipment with the command stat? Brother Assist, reply to the man and tell him that we have one such equipment in our possession. Arrange for a location and we'll kill him there. Everything is that easy, young Master Han said. Why will he even reply if he sees Brother Assist's ID? Royal God Call believed that young Master Han had made a foolish mistake here. Before young Master Han could express his disdain, Brother Assist was the first to interject. I have my alt accounts, too. I'll go make contact, wait for my news. Brother Assist logged on to chat with the rest about this matter, and since he had yet to leave the designated log-off point, he immediately logged off after this conversation. Meanwhile, the others began to stop what they were busy with and prepared to gather for this task at hand. Brother Assist visited the forums using one of his alt accounts after he had logged off and saw that the first off-topic thread of the trade forum was still up, though it had been pushed back to page 11. The significant enthusiasm that the players demonstrated from before subsided. Were it not for the fact that it had been highlighted so blatantly, Brother Assist figured it would have long sunk further down into the archives. He had no idea if the other party was still waiting for more news, so he simply replied to the thread, claiming he had one such equipment on hand. What equipment? How many command points does it add? Brother Assist refreshed the page a few times before he finally got a reply from the original poster. Crap, I made a mistake. Brother Assist slapped his mouth lightly. He had yet to finish doing his homework, yet he already came pestering the person. While Brother Assist was knowledgeable, he had never once come across such equipment before. Still, even though he had not seen any, he reckoned that Silver Moon would likely only have that one or two piece himself. Given how large Parallel World was, there was no way he would know other such sort of equipment as well, right? With such a thought in mind, Brother Assist boldly replied, Commander's Ring, plus 18 command. He thought that this was a convincing bluff. 18 command points, plus the 9 points that players could have, would give a player a total of 27 command points, which should be enough for Silver Moon to use King's Blade. There was no way that the other party would refuse. Sure enough, a few more refreshes of the page and the person on the other side replied, How much? You may start the bid. Brother Assist treated this like a normal sale and acted the part of the seller. 500. This person did not hesitate long. That's too cheap, bro. It ain't easy getting this thing here. Brother Assist was of course not in the least bit concerned about the price, but he was afraid that agreeing to the price too readily would raise the man's suspicion, so he decided to continue and haggle over the price. Buddy, there's no use for such equipment currently, and all I need it for is to activate the equipment I have on me right now. 500 is already what I'm willing to part with a rare item like this. Would the item really be worth anything otherwise? The other party replied. How straightforward. Brother Assist did not expect that the deceiver Silver Moon would be so honest. A wolf in sheep's clothing? He thought to himself of how different the man was now that he was using his alt account before he replied, Your post on the trade forum has been up for the whole day, and the thread has derailed to such a point, yet no one responded for a trade. This forum has never encountered such an inefficient transaction before. You can tell just how rare this equipment is thusly, so will 500 really be enough to cover the rarity alone? How about this, bring the goods and we shall talk about this in person and game? It's really too troublesome doing this here. The two of them had to keep refreshing the page to keep this transaction going. No problem. Brother Assist only required them to meet. He was prepared to suggest the very same thing if the other party continued to dawdle, Anyway, but who would have guessed that this other person would be the one to spring the request first? What's your IGN in the game? The man asked. No. Tell me a location, and we can both meet. Brother Assist replied with this. Instead, this request would not really cause any sort of unnecessary suspicion because there were too many transactions that were done over the trade forums in such a fashion. Without even mentioning any names, a location would be arranged in such a way that it was possible for either party to complete the transaction without even knowing the other party's IGN, how he or she looked, or even their gender. Which city are you in? The person asked. Linian City. Brother Assist replied. A transaction between players in two different cities was an issue as well, and sometimes it would take hours before the requested equipment could make its way over like this. Players kept appealing for a shared trade exchange and auction house across the entire parallel world, but the officials explained that this was not an issue of being unwilling to allow such a function, but that it was a technological limitation that made it impossible for the auction house and trade exchange to be connected throughout the game world. Actually, this was the same issue Yizio had explained regarding the map coordinates and the corresponding map codes in the various cities, how the servers were incapable of handling them all at once, so they had to be separately managed in such a manner. Oh, how coincidental, I am in Linian City as well, the other party replied. Chapter 550. Flaw. Since he's come all this way to Linian City, it seems that they are urgently looking to make their move against us. Brother Assist thought of this before he quickly replied with a location for the meetup. As for the time of the rendezvous, he gave the excuse of having matters to attend to first to push the meeting to an hour later. Brother Assist swiftly went online after this exchange and informed everybody of it. Having bought themselves an hour to get the lay of the land before the meetup, they strove to make it much easier for them to arrange the necessary preparations. A tavern? Not bad. This was young Master Han's favorite rendezvous point. Almost all the players would choose to meet in one. We should all recognize Silver Moon, but there's no telling if the rascal is gonna meet anybody with his face uncovered. Everyone should be on the lookout for a level 36 knight, especially someone with gear that increases sword mastery. Brother Assist reminded the others. But he's gonna recognize us as well. Royal God Call said. We're all gonna have our face covered. There's no need for us to enter the tavern as well, and we can just simply wait for the man outside, Brother Assist suggested. Wait a minute. What if Silver Moon isn't the one to come? What if he asks a friend to take care of the transaction? What then? War Without Wounds suddenly thought of this point. Friend? Does he still have a friend at this point? Young Master Han scoffed when he heard that. The man had naturally considered all these potentialities and details when the plan was first raised. He made sure not to raise it precisely so that he could wait for someone else to stumble upon it by their own and mock them accordingly. Unfortunately, it was War Without Wounds who had fallen for this and figuratively slapped himself in the face as a result. Damn, I've really done myself dirty with my words this time. War Without Wounds thought. He swore to himself multiple times never to raise a suspicion, a suggestion, or even a question when this man came up with a plan. Why did he keep forgetting it? Even young Masters Elite had never been to Forest Lane Tavern, the proposed rendezvous point. Once each of them inquired about its location, they easily located the establishment. Unfortunately, the tavern was entirely unlike how they had imagined it to be. Not only was Forest Lane Tavern in a secluded part of the city, squirreled away in a dead-end alley and buried deep in many twists and turns, there was just a trickle of crowd streaming in and out of the entrance. Hardly any players who enjoyed setting up stalls outside the premises were hawking goods in this location, too. With barely any player traffic in the area, as well as the alley itself not having enough space for people to share a stall, young Master Hans planned for them to use such stalls to hide in plain sight to surprise attack Silver Moon the moment they caught sight of him was, by the looks of things, no longer possible. Setting up a stall here would just serve to raise suspicion, and given Silver Moon's wily ways, he would most likely sense that something was off right away. Furthermore, the two houses in this alley were squat, meaning, there was no way for people to hide themselves atop the roofs as they would be easily spotted from a distance. Thus, the only option they had was to enter the tavern themselves. Let's head in. After standing by the alley entrance and taking in the place before their sights, young Master Han led everyone right into the tavern. Despite the tavern being remote and compact, There was quite a crowd inside it. Compared to the boisterousness and liveliness common to taverns everywhere, this tavern nestled in a quiet corner of Linian City, which most players hardly made the effort to visit, was actually the favorite dive for lovers. They all saw plenty of couples holding hands within, seemingly oblivious to the world around them as they whispered sweet nothings to each other, laughing and moving their lips, yet none of them was contributing to the place's ambience. When the five of them entered in such a blatant manner, it had the effect of drawing everyone's attention, with each showing a look of shock. It was apparent that the sudden appearance of five men with their faces covered was incongruent to the prevailing atmosphere in the tavern. Royal Godcall and War Without Wounds looked on enviously, while Brother Assist and Sword Demon felt out of place in this type of setting. Young Master Han, on the other hand, showed far more disregard to any of these lovebirds present as his words shattered the tranquility of the tavern. "What are you people looking at? Never seen people with their faces covered before?" With that, he waved his hand and got the attention of the bartending NPC, ordering his drink as he made his way over to the biggest table in the hall. Everyone surreptitiously lowered their heads. Even Sword Demon and the others did the same. "Ahem, I'll head over to the door to keep a lookout." Sword Demon felt uneasy with the atmosphere of this tavern, and after young Master Han had made a scene, he fired this message on the mercenary channel and quickly made his escape. Squatting at a corner of the dead end outside, Sword Demon entered stealth. "I gotta take notes," Royal Godcall expressed, which received a resounding approval from War Without Wounds. The two selected the most harmonious and compatible couple from all the available options before them and seated themselves at a table close by to observe them. Just as they were preparing to prick their ears and properly learn what the two were saying, the couple got up and rushed out of the tavern, leaving the two men exchanging glances. Brother Assist acted more natural. Humbly making his way over to young Master Han's table and quietly occupying a seat, he ordered no liquor of his own and just looked at young Master Han. "I wanna see how you're drinking that liquor while your face is covered by a piece of cloth." Young Master Han raised his brow at him, as if he was smirking, calmly pulled out a straw from his dimensional pocket, and dropped it down the glass of liquor. Brother Assist breathed deeply and thrust a thumbs up at young Master Han. "Amazing." With that, he got up and walked over to the second table on the left, which was precisely the position that they were meeting. Once he got himself seated, Brother Assist nodded to young Master Han. Everything was proceeded as they had planned. Minutes later, Royal Godcall and War Without Wounds began to salaciously evaluate every lady in the tavern, scaring away a third of the patrons in the process. Young Master Han continued to suck on his straw to drink his liquor, frightening another third of the players present. Brother Assist sat by himself sans a word or drink in hand, not moving an inch and looking very much like a murderer. The remaining third of the players were scared off as well. Soon, all that was left in the tavern were the four men. Outside the tavern, Sword Demon sent a message in puzzlement. "Why are people leaving?" "The atmosphere," was the first reply, followed by, "Too strong." Afterward, another two pairs of lovebirds visited the establishment. The first pair immediately turned to leave upon seeing the strange sight inside, while the second pair reacted much slower. Getting a seat for themselves, it took the couple a while before they realized that something was off and quickly exited the tavern, too. Thereafter, not one of these men was bothered by those things happening as they stared at the time, counting the minutes as it passed. Only 5 minutes were left to Brother Assist's agreed on rendezvous time with the other party. "Someone's coming." Sword Demon sent a message. "How many are there?" "Just one, but he doesn't look like a knight." This figure was off in the distance, so Sword Demon was unable to use his appraisal. Besides, using the skill would cancel out his stealth. All he could do was make his assumptions from how the man was dressed. "If you can confirm his identity, you can just kill him off, Sword Demon." "Is there even a need for us to spring into action?" Royal Godcall asked from inside the tavern. He's a priest." Sword Demon was finally able to make out what the man was wearing, and it was without a doubt something a priest would wear. Could that twerp be deliberately obfuscating his true identity? These people had their suspicions. It was not impossible for a knight to dress like a priest, and they knew that Sword Demon, who could currently not use appraisal, was only reporting the man's appearance. In the end, Sword Demon called out this person's name to the others once this person got closer. Its fleeting smile. Why is it him? Brother Assist was stunned. Of course, he can be considered as Silver Moon's friend now. It's just unfortunate that we managed to lure someone who's unafraid to lose a level. Young Master Han sighed. He's making his way over. He's by the entrance. He's going in. Sword Demon sent a series of 3 messages, yet young Master Han only replied with one: maintain your position and remain stealthed. The tavern door opened, and Yixiao stepped in. He gazed over at the 4 players scattered in the 3 table inside the tavern and chuckled. It's you guys, alright. Oh, you already knew? Young Master Han did not seem to be too surprised by this revelation, taking off the piece of cloth on his face and tossing away the straw. It was indeed a lot more enjoyable drinking his liquor straight from the bottle. Yixiao's eyes went around each of their faces and called out, "Who's the one who contacted me?" "That would be me," Brother Assist admitted openly. Yixiao shook his head. "I don't recall this game having a piece of equipment by the name of Commander's Ring." Brother Assist was shocked, ashamed to think that this was the flaw that gave their plan away. If he knew that this would happen, he would not loaf off in that step and research for the actual equipment with that stat. Even though this sort of equipment was rare, it would be just like how he had first found out about King's Blade. He just had to ask Vast Lushness about item Silver Moon had on. The fault in this slip-up lay entirely on the fact that he had presumed he was conversing with Silver Moon this whole time. "You have quite the extensive knowledge about this game. It really seems that you're someone with plenty of inside information," young Master Han commented. "Just a little," Yixiao passively replied. "All that knowledge in you, yet you're still delving into the game. Running all over like this, aren't you afraid of danger?" Young Master Han asked. Yixiao naturally knew how to read between the lines and calmly answered, "I know my limits." "How are things outside?" Young Master Han asked Sword Demon. "No change," Sword Demon replied. Young Master Han got up and waved his arm casually. "Kill him." Yixiao instead laughed. "It's not that easy to kill me." Before Royal God Call or War Without Wounds could make a move, Yixiao already disappeared in a blinding white light. Teleportation yet again. The 2 are crushed. "It could be Windchaser's emblem," young Master Han said. "Why would he have? Cool Apple has one, so he can of course borrow it from him." Young Master Han cut them off. "That guy came over to say those few words and proceeded to teleport away." "What's that for? Was he intentionally trying to mock us?" Royal God Call was confused. "Perhaps, there's already an ambush outside," Brother Assist supposed. "That's right, since he's already aware that this is a trap, he might very well have a ploy set up to trap us," War Without Wounds said. Instead, young Master Han shook his head. "If that were the case, there would be no need for him to disappear like that, as he should have his ambush set up before we made it here. So, what's the point of him making the trip?" "It's as Royal said, was he here to mock us?" "Aside from a scamp like Royal, who's so bored to do something like that?" War Without Wounds said. "Scram, you old coot!" Royal God Call scolded, causing the 2 men to fight. "Let's make our move first." Young Master Han took the bottle of liquor from the table and left. Outside, Sword Demon cancelled his stealth and stared at the long and narrow alley. They all instinctively felt that it might be safer if they climbed up and over the houses. Instead, the 5 took turns to make their way up. Looking around them, they found absolutely nothing out of the ordinary. "There's really no ambush." Brother Assist could hardly believe it. "Just what is that guy up to?" Royal God Call muttered. Could he really be as childish as Royal? War Without Wounds wondered aloud. "Fuck you." Royal God Call cursed. Sword Demon made no comment as he looked at young Master Han. "Relax, everything is well within my grasp." Young Master Han drained that bottle in his hand.